No commentary playthroughs are available for Horizon Zero Dawn, The Frozen Wilds, and Horizon Forbidden West below. Hello everyone, Adam here, and today I'll be explaining the entirety of Horizon Zero Dawn, the expansion The Frozen Wilds, and the recently released Horizon 2 Forbidden West. If you want to hear my review of Horizon 2, a link is available below as well. Horizon Zero Dawn opens up with a bunch of children gathering berries as a little girl watches them from afar. The tribe of people are called Nora, and the young girl decides to help them by gathering berries, but the woman quickly tells everyone to leave, telling everyone that she's an outcast and must be shunned. This enrages and disheartens the child, who runs off but falls into a hole. Named Aloy, she calls out to Ross, someone we have yet to meet. Heading through the caverns, Aloy finds a device on the floor that looks like a Bluetooth headset. Putting it on, it interfaces with the various computers and starts to appear before Aloy. Aloy expresses how this is entirely new to her, using the various interfaces to open closed doors and unlock her first video. A father sending his son Isaac a birthday message. Aloy is overjoyed to talk to someone, highlighting how isolated she's been. Aloy starts to decode the messages about people ending themselves in the facility, but we'll learn later why this is happening. The first recordings highlight their final moments, ranging from anger, regret, and acceptance. Ross finally finds Aloy and is angered, stating that these areas are forbidden, but doesn't say why, calling them of the metal world. Ross demands her item, stating that it's dangerous, but Aloy refuses. Despite this, Ross allows her to keep it. Given the recent events, Ross decides it's time to train Aloy in hunting and scavenging. To ensure if this happens, she'll be able to survive on her own. The next day, Aloy is toying with the device and it starts to become more personalized to her words and actions. Ross starts slow, showing Aloy various medical plants and berries, along with tracking and hunting machines. The two come across another person parkouring, to Aloy's amazement, but they ignore him and press on, with Aloy scoring her first machine kill and learning how to harvest materials from the body. Just then, they hear screams and hear the same boy falling and is unable to move. Aloy wants to help, but Ross believes it's a lost cause. Attacking them will cause a stampede of machines, and there are too many to sneak past. Aloy uses the device and finds out she can see the machine pathing, but Ross doesn't believe her. Aloy defies Ross, losing her bow when Ross tries to stop her, but Aloy is successful in saving the kid, whose name is Teb. He wants to thank her, but he's disciplined by his father for speaking to an outcast, with Aloy being called motherless. Aloy wanders off and is attacked by the same pack of kids, specifically Bast, who scars her with a rock. Here, Aloy can decide to throw the rock, hitting Bast in the face or hand, or drop the rock entirely, in an attempt for Gorilla to make Aloy more personalized to the player, but it wasn't well received since Aloy isn't a blank character like Commander Shepard, but someone with an exact personality. Ross appears when the kids run off, and Aloy pressed Ross for answers of why she's an outcast or who her mother is. Ross lets slip that the matriarchs know, but she cannot ask them due to being an outcast. Aloy presses Ross for answers, and he reveals that the only way is to win the Proven, a difficult gauntlet of tests, and the winner is labeled a Nora warrior called the Brave and given one request called a boon. Knowing he cannot change her mind, Ross agrees, and Aloy is excited, with training beginning for years at a time as Ross teaches her how to become a skilled hunter, tracker, scavenger, and warrior, all while learning more about the machines through the device, which is called a focus. Now around the age of 19, Aloy is asked by Ross to gather items for a fire arrow and tripcaster as the Proven nears. Despite being an outcast, Aloy is able to speak and help the surrounding Nora because all of them are desperate for help. A father whose daughter is in trouble, a former Nora outcast who sells Aloy the items she needs, and a man suffering from schizophrenia. While now acquired, these quests become a tutorial in climbing and hunting beyond the opening section of the game. With the arrows in hand and the tripcaster available, Aloy heads to Ross, but she also discusses the policy of an outcast. Refusing to let Ross go, Aloy believes that she can still see him in secret, and despite being unable to speak to her, since Ross holds Nora traditions highly, she'll be able to talk to him regardless. This is because while Ross was raised as a Nora, Aloy doesn't hold the same regard for their traditions, and is only doing this to learn about her mother. Wait until night, Aloy and Rost head outside the Embrace, a territory outside Nora lands. Rost is given passage, and while it's not explained why, when we learn about Rost's past later on in the game, it becomes apparent why these Nora are allowing Rost to pass by without any type of issue. But everything has to be kept in secret or they risk exile as well. Rost explains to Aloy they're hunting a new machine called a Sawtooth. It appeared in the last few months and has been causing havoc and killing Nora. Aloy is here to track and destroy the machine by herself and uses the gear she acquired through Rost's request to defeat the machine alone. Aloy believes this was a test to showcase her skills, but no. Rost wanted to show her that she needs to act for others, not just for herself. Killing the Sawtooth saved lives, and that's why Rost wanted her to do it. Rost is only specifically talking about the Nora people in this regard because that's what Braves do. They protect the Nora, not the world. But eventually, Aloy will apply this same lesson to everyone she meets in life, seeing that there's a big, wide world that she can protect and help people. Heading to the Nora village, Rost gives his final farewells and gives her a token to remind him. Despite Aloy's plan to meet him in secret, Rost wants to honor Nora traditions, for Aloy to live the life he had and embrace the Nora life, and not to live in isolation anymore or risk returning to it. Deciding to leave somewhere she cannot follow, Aloy can choose to reject this, stating she'll find him, accept his wishes, or lash out at Rost for asking her to forget about him. Regardless, Rost leaves and Aloy heads into the village. Inside, Aloy is met with resistance, but Teresa, one of the matriarchs, welcomes Aloy with open arms. Aloy can meet Teb, who thanks her for saving his life and gives her armor for the proven, stating he never became a warrior but stitches armor instead as he's better at that than fighting. The entire village is alive, with Gorilla highlighting the culture of the Nora through music and stories, with Aloy able to listen to the story that highlights how the children of metal were killed by the machines that brought them comfort, which is why the Nora forbid exploring the ruins and old technology incorporated into their life, including limited machine use, seeing those ruins as an omen that could repeat the past. On a stage, a sun priest is speaking on behalf of the Karja, another tribe outside Nora lands, apologizing for something on behalf of his king, but the Nora throw fruit, yelling about slavers and murderers. Eren, an Osram, a tribe of mercenaries, explorers, and engineers, quells the people by explaining to the people despite his own people, his sister as well, being taken for sacrifices by the 13th Sun King, the 14th Sun King named Avad killed the mad tyrant. For the last 2 years, the Sun has been trying to restore the goodwill and peace among those affected by his father, with campaigns into territories that his father raided. Aloy is distracted by someone wearing a focus, a man named Oland. Shocked knowing Nora forbid ancient technology, he leaves when Eren appears. Eren introduces himself to Aloy, one of the members of the Vanguard, a set of frontline troops for the Sun King. He also low-key flirts with Aloy, and Aloy can ask about Eren about the Red Raids and the Karja, as Aloy is unaware of this, being an outcast. Eren explains the 13th Sun King thought that if he sacrificed enough people to the Sun God, it would calm the machines, which have become increasingly more violent each year, with the first sighting of hostile machines being called the Derangement 15 years ago. Before, machines would just run away once they saw anyone, with more dangerous variants appearing, as we saw with the Sawtooth. More and more dangerous machines are causing havoc, and they don't know what's causing it. The king's son, Avad, united the Karja rebels along with the Osram mercenaries to take the Karja capital, Meridian, and kill the Mad Sun King. Since then, he welcomes all and has been undoing his father's crimes. Aloy offers sympathy for Eren's sister, but he explains that she was taken and not sacrificed. Named Ursa, she's the leader of the Vanguard and was essential to Avad's success, with Eren stating that they share similar personalities, being so direct. In fact, we'll see that Avad will see a lot of Ursa in Aloy, mixing them together, and we'll get to that later. Eren leaves and Aloy takes part in the final part of the festival, where prayer lanterns are made by the family of the contestants and lit honoring those who came before, with Teresa making Aloy's lantern. Aloy can say a prayer for Rost, her unknown mother, or herself. Aloy can't speak to Olin, who is hostile towards her and dodges her questions, like he's trying to avoid something, and Aloy takes notice. Regardless, he just leaves. Aloy meets more assholes like Rest, who guards the brave contestants outside their hut, insulting Aloy, but she gets the last word in. Inside the shelter with the other contestants, Aloy can speak to the others, including Bosch, the kid who threw the rock. As expected, he's an asshole who thinks highly of himself. Vala is a female hunter who is nice to Aloy, and the two become fast friends. She senses Aloy's skill but acknowledges that her own talents are grand and advises that Boss, despite being cocky, is also skilled as well. The proving begins with a contest requiring the Nora to destroy a machine, take a trophy, and travel through a dangerous path. Aloy gets her first trophy, but Boss cheats her by destroying it. This causes Aloy to fall behind, and to catch up takes a dangerous path. She's successful and is the first to cross the finish line, with Boss angry, of course. The victory is short-lived as they are ambushed by killers. Boss, Vala, and Aloy are the only survivors in the beginning, with everyone trying to fight back. Unfortunately, Vala and Boss are killed, with Aloy nearing the next, but at the nick of time, Ross comes saving Aloy, likely watching the Proven from afar and attempts to kill her attacker, but is fatally wounded. To save Aloy, he throws her off the mountain, but dies from the resultant explosion. Aloy survives thanks to the matriarchs finding her and taking her into the Nora's sacred mountain called Allmother. Aloy recovers from her injuries and locates her stuff, finding a message from the unknown killer who specifically targeted Aloy, seeing through Olin's focus. A woman who looks a lot like an older Aloy then appears with a kill order placed on Aloy because she looks like this woman. Teresa appears and speaks to Aloy, revealing a bombshell, telling Aloy that she knows nothing about the woman, but also that Aloy has no mother. She was born from the mountain. Teresa reveals the inner chamber of Allmother where they found Aloy, and Teresa believing she was a gift from Allmother since she appears in front of the metal door, as opposed to the other matriarch Larsa, who saw her as an omen. The door begins scanning Aloy and recognizes her, but cannot confirm her due to Alpha Registry being corrupted. Aloy is crippled with everything that transpired, losing Rosk and now unable to find her origins, but despite this, Teresa gives Aloy something to follow through by thinking out loud. Olin. He had a focus which makes him her only lead. You can also see the remains of a large machine throughout the mountain as it pierced the rock, complementing the Nora's ideology of how the machines rebelled against the old ones and why Nora see that these old runes should be avoided. Believing she needs to be exiled to travel outside Nora land, Teresa has a plan. Teresa tells Aloy that they sent war parties to kill the killers but were ambushed by machines under the control of the killers, and as a person of action, Teresa wants to do something about it, but the matriarch's sisters just want to pray to her annoyance. Speaking to the two other high matriarchs, Giza and Larsa, Larsa, and Teresa decide to make Aloy a seeker, someone within the Nora who can travel outside Nora lands, even to forbidden ruins. Teresa and the Nora believe they are forbidden because the machines the Children of Metal built rebelled against them, and avoiding them is the only way to ensure that it doesn't happen again. But when Aloy explains that the ruins look just like Allmother, Teresa is shocked, and this causes her to question her worldview. Aloy asks what happened to Ross's body, which she explains they buried at his home what they could find. Aloy does try to dive into Ross's past, asking Teresa if Ross was made a seeker, but she says no, he was made something else, but they can't explain at the moment, given time is the essence. At the gate, Aloy meets with Teb, who sends a warning to her, telling her that the machines outside have become increasingly more violent. Worse, due to most of the Nora Braves dying after the initial attack or going after the killers, they're actually using civilians in order to guard the Nora tribe, with Teb being made a warrior temporarily in order to fight against the machines. Even worse is that Rest has been made temporary war chief due to the original war chief Sona going after the killers. If you don't remember who Rest was, I don't blame you. He was the asshole who was guarding the gate to the proven contestants. With Aloy also finding out that Vala was the daughter of the war chief Sona that went after the killers. Aloy meets with Rest, but their conversation is cut short despite the guy acting again like an asshole, with Aloy telling him what she's been made. She's been made a seeker and he has to follow her orders. With everyone seeing a machine called a Corruptor taking control of the surrounding machines to ram the Nora gate. With the help of the Nora, they destroy the Corruptor and Aloy strips the override module from it. While everyone attempts to recover, Aloy uses the override module to take control of a Strider, a horse-like machine, and rides it to Varl, the Nora guarding entryway to the Nora sacred land. We learn that Varl is the son of Sona, and his mother went on ahead despite the heavy losses they face. She's missing, and Aloy must find her to ensure she's okay and recover what little the Nora have in terms of morale and warriors. It isn't long before Aloy meets with some colorful characters like Nil, a psychopathic killer who enjoys murdering things, but found killing bandits allows him to keep killing while suffering consequences, even getting paid to do it. And we'll learn more about Nil as we go on, even though he's optional. Along with a fellow Nora, such as a young healer needing Dream Willow, a type of plant that acts like morphine, and more Nora outcasts who are just trying to survive. Aloy catches Sona's trail and finds a Nora brave named Dran, who fought with Sona but due to his wounds was sent back to tell the Nora that she was still alive. He didn't really make it that far. I guess those injuries were very dangerous. Finding the trail again, Aloy finds Sona, and Aloy helps her raid a camp owned by the killers. They're successful, but Sona notices this isn't all the killers and wants to press on despite her exhaustion. Faro appears and wants to avenge his fallen comrades, to Sona's disapproval. Aloy decides she doesn't want to be in the middle of this and decides to go look for evidence instead. Most importantly, I can see where Sona is coming from. Even though she's a war chief first and takes her job extremely seriously, she just lost her daughter. And now mixed up with all of this, Varl has the chance of dying in this campaign. Losing one child is hard. Imagine losing both your children to the same group of people. Probably would send her over the edge. Aloy does find a recording from the killers. They're called clips if you have the subtitles enabled. It tells you right below, but they don't tell you to the player. Are stockpiling Blaze at a camp called the Ring of Metal, which is forbidden for Nora to travel on. Blaze being a combustible material found on machines. Sona needs to ask for the matriarch's approval to travel to the Ring of Metal, but they have to move now or they risk losing the trail. They agree to go, believing that Aloy's secret position is valid enough for everyone. Aloy, Sona, Varl, and the other Nora help kill the surrounding camps, followed by Varl and Aloy sneaking into the main camp. Aloy, knowing where the blaze is located thanks to her focus, sets fire to the blaze, destroying the camp's corruptors and destroying the wall, allowing the Nora to help everyone inside. Olin is nowhere to be found, so Aloy returns to the path to Meridian, with Varl telling Aloy to find Maria in the Mother's Crown camp as she knows the way. While at Mother's Crown, Aloy can help some of the Nora and even learn about the overriding of machines, with Aloy learning about cauldrons where machines are made, and if cleansed of the corrupted code, can learn how to override even more machines to aid her in her journey. The most important is an optional mission about a woman named Nakoa, whose brother is worried about after she left without warning. A family member of hers stated that she went after a Kardran named Zaid, who played a major part in the Red Raids, killing her brother and torturing other innocent people. She's after him to kill him. Aloy locates Maria, who explains that the fort is called Day Tower that gates the east and the west, but is sealed due to the corruption. Aloy reaches the gate, but it's under attack by corruptors, which Aloy destroys, allowing her access to the fort in thanks. Aloy speaks to the leader of the fort, Captain Balan, and he tells that Orlin passed by after returning from his job to help Eren escort the Sun Priest. He speaks about the new Sun King, about its leadership, and how he approves of focusing on peace and even ending slavery in Meridian. Asking about Nakoa, Balan explains that she attacked one of his soldiers, Prefect Zaid, but this Zaid is not the one that Nakoa is looking for, being a issue of mistaken identity, and calmly tells Aloy the situation, even letting Nakoa go. Speaking to Zaid, he confirms this, and that he was part of the Red Raids but didn't torture or kill anyone, and doesn't know where she is, but tells Aloy he heard rumors that she may be in Lonesome Rock. Balan also asked Aloy to find a missing soldier who went missing in a previous mission. He was forced to be left behind due to a very bad attack. Aloy is able to locate him, but his pride prevents him from coming back with Aloy. Instead, she has to force him to come back after dealing with some snap marls that took his armor. Aloy heads to Lonesome Rock as Zaid said, but is ambushed by Karja guards. After killing them, she finds that Zaid is the same person Nakoa has been hunting and has been capturing people to sell into slavery. Aloy and Nakoa who was captured and now free, helps kill Zaid and his men, with Nakoya deciding to stay in the Forbidden Lands to help those who Zaid capture, and seeing she left Nora lands without permission, she's officially in exile now. She tells Aloy that she'll tell her brother Yen, who started this entire campaign through a special way, likely merchants, that she's safe. You can find another bandit camp with Nil hovering nearby as he's about to raid it, and after you complete it, he'll reveal more information about his background. Nil loved war so much that he fought for and against the Karja, even confessing to his crimes when Avad promised leniency for those who did. He spent 2 years in a prison called Sunstone Rock, but we'll get nothing else from him for the time being. Heading to Meridian, Aloy is greeted by Eren, who thought she died when word came of the attack on the Braves made it to him. During the conversation, Aloy finds out that Eren is now leading the vanguard, but it has been day drinking because his sister recently died and he's been overwhelmed with the pressure to live up to her example. Aloy explains that Olin may be working with them, and Eren escorts her to Olin's home. However, when heading to Olin's house, we find that the people are restless due to Ursa's death. No one knows what happened, and Avad isn't saying anything at the moment. Considering what impact Ursa had on the Karja becoming what they are now, people want answers, but Eren is dealing with the death very difficultly. Inside Olin's home, Aloy finds a vault underneath a rug, and using a ton of iron, literally, breaks open the vault. Inside, Aloy finds out that Olin is being extorted. If he doesn't do what the Eclipse say, they'll kill his family. Using her focus, Aloy finds evidence revealing Olin's involvement and possible location, with Aloy choosing whether or not to share this information with Eren. Not fully understanding, Eren asked Aloy to use her focus in solving his sister's murder, and the two head to Red Ridge if the player decides to do so. Considering Horizon Forbidden West, Aloy is confirmed to help in Eren, this is canon. Eren tells Aloy at the location that Ursa was ambushed along with her men in the middle of the night by several Shadow Karja, the people who still worship the Mad Sun King that Avad killed, and her face was caved in. Using her focus, Aloy finds out that the bodies were placed as decoys. Following the wagon's trail used to transport the bodies, they're ambushed by Ashram mercenaries. Aloy puts evidence together to learn that they disabled Ursa using a type of sound weapon, as evidenced by the broken rock nearby, and using her focus to compile the information. Aloy figures out they caved in someone else's face to disguise the murder, and tells Eren to analyze the body to make sure it's Ursa. Following this, Aloy goes back to Meridian to meet with the Sun King himself, Avad, and his advisor, Blameless Murad. Eren reveals the body is not Ursa, since the body doesn't have a scar on the knee which he gave her when they were fighting over a toy soldier as kids. Murad thinks that this is the work of an Ashram soldier named Avad, as he is the mastermind that could only execute such a plan, but Eren doesn't believe it since he's wanted by everyone and is likely hiding or dead. Regardless, Murad has an agent investigating the border for him, and Aloy decides that this is the best lead. The Sun King Avad speaks to Aloy alone, telling her about Devad and that he wants revenge against the Karja for the Red Raids. The Mad Sun King murdered his people in droves, and in response, Devad created weapons to fight against his father. Ursa and Devad fought together to defeat the Mad Sun King, but when it came out that he planned to destroy Meridian and butcher the innocents of the city, she turned against him. Aloy and Eren find the agent dead, but in his final moments drew a map in his own blood. I mean, that's just hardcore and dedication, dear God. Turns out Murad was right, and they find the camp and fight their way inside. Finding a sound weapon blocking their path, Aloy finds blockers in one of the soldiers' ears and uses it to bypass the weapon to let Eren in. Ursa is found with the suspected and now confirmed sound weapon, keeping her stunned. Ursa reveals that Deval called her hoping for a pardon, but she knew it was a trap but underestimated him. In her final moment, she tells Eren Deval's plan and that Avad needs him, while showcasing that she loved him and believed he can lead the vanguard and protect everyone. Aloy gives Eren time to mourn as she investigates the lab. Finding Deval set a lot of blaze to Meridian, created the sound device and the blockers so the sound weapon won't affect him. Despite wanting to mourn Ursa, they need to stop Deval. Back at Meridian, Aloy warns them of what's to come about the blaze, learning that it was sent to someone named Alim Forgeman in order to disguise that Deval sent it to Meridian. Murad remembers the name as the Osram have been buying large amounts of property in Meridian, allowing Aloy and Eren to focus on where he may be. Before they leave, Avad and Murad demanded Eren take Devald alive for keeping the peace. If they kill him, they risk war with the Osram, as they want him to pay for his crimes. Before leaving, Avad asked Aloy about Ursa's final moments, but it's up to the player to decide how to break things or just leave things, considering the high stakes of the actions that are about to proceed. They're able to find the location with all the blazes stored up. I mean, the fact no one took notice of this is pretty shocking. But nevertheless, Eren and Aloy are able to toss it out the building's window onto the floor below. The surprising fact is that no one was hurt in this entire commotion is staggering. I mean, if you remember below Meridian, specifically this building, there's an entire commerce sector. So the fact no one was hurt or killed is shocking. The building explodes, but Aloy realizes that Devald is likely here to make sure his plan worked. Aloy tells Eren to head back to the palace and protect everyone inside as she tracks someone with a large amount of blaze on their boots, leading her right to Devald, who is sneaking beneath the castle. Aloy sees Devald deploy his machine to disable Avad, but when he tries to trigger the stockpile of blaze, it doesn't explode. He leaves to see what happened. Once destroyed, Aloy does battle with Devald and his man and the machines he summoned using a beacon. Eren appears and wants to murder Devald, but decides against it in order to honor Ursa's final wish to protect everyone in Meridian, but at the same time knowing that he'll be tortured to high heavens by the Osram. In the aftermath, Avad reveals that he wanted to marry Ursa, but the fragile peace between their tribes meant it couldn't be. He also reveals that Devald wanted Ursa as his own, but she rejected him. I guess the fact that he wanted to murder lots of innocent people turned her off, likely fueling his rage knowing she chose Avad over him. Avad asks Aloy to stay in Meridian, but this won't be the only time he does this, as he is smitten by Aloy and just lost Ursa. Likely the two were similar, as Eren stated when we first met him, and he also states that Aloy is a lot like Ursa. He's trying to replace Ursa with Aloy because he sees a lot of her in Aloy, and it's just a little weird, considering not only their age difference, but the fact they just met. Like, hey, let's, get to know each other, go on a date. Didn't you just lose the person you loved most in this life? Yeah, but you're like her. It's kind of creepy. Eren, still mourning Ursa's death, is better knowing that his sister's killer is going away for a long time and Ursa can rest easy. He thanks Aloy for everything, expresses how grateful he is for having met her, and Aloy returns to Jester, forging their relationship and special friendship. She'll call on him for help throughout Horizon 1 and Horizon 2, and they'll grow even stronger. If you wish, you can go down to the prison area where Devald's being held, and you can hear optional dialogue from him as he taunts Aloy, but all things considered, it's just sad that someone this smart fell so hard. But considering what happened to him during the Red Raid, something like that just doesn't go away. But he might be needed in the third game. He may be incredibly dangerous, but he is very smart and his weapons could prove useful for the upcoming threat that we discover in Horizon 2 Forbidden West. Heading to Olin's location, Aloy sees the cultists reviving dormant corruptors, but a loud shock rings out with everyone's focus disabled. Aloy is contacted by an unknown but very important person who disabled everyone's focus to give her an advantage, and she uses it to take down everyone and the corruptors, finally allowing her to finally speak to Olin. He reveals that the killers are called Eclipse, as we already know from the subtitles provided to us in the first camp that we raided with Sona. The cult was born from the Shadow Carja, the people who worship the Mad Sun King. The Eclipse are just much more extreme. They now worship a metal devil called Hades that ordered Aloy's death, but Olin doesn't know beyond the fact that she looks like this woman. They're led by Helos, the man who killed Ross, who recruited Olin by force at Maker's End, threatening to kill his family. Olin doesn't know anything about the woman or anything beyond what we already know, but asks Aloy to save his family. At this point, it's up to Aloy whether she kills Olin or just decides to let him live and help him save his family, which makes little sense considering he was forced to do this. Regardless, I kept him alive, and it just seems out of character for Aloy to kill someone who's clearly a victim. Again, it's just them trying to make Aloy more personalized to the player, but it just plays in contradiction to Aloy's established personality where these options are not available. Regardless, I chose to keep him alive. So heading to the location where Olin's family is located, you can either ask Olin for help or do the entire mission yourself, saving his family, and Olin will disappear with his family in hopes that he can live a better life and be better considering everything he's done. Heading to Maker's End, Aloy is contacted by the same mysterious stranger who reveals the name of the woman, Elisabet Sobeck, but doesn't elaborate outside from the location of supplies he left for Aloy. Aloy battles her way through the hordes of Eclipse and robots, along with a new machine called the Deathbringer. The mysterious stranger does help out by disabling focuses, but when Aloy attempts to access an Eclipse focus, Hades overrides it and explodes. But in Maker's End, Aloy does gain access to the facility using the same scanning process, but this time there's no corruption detected, allowing her to go through. Inside the automatic voice, the system reveals that over 300,000 days have passed, with the machine telling Elisabet to meet someone named Faro in the top office. Inside, we learn of someone named Ted Faro who's trying to find a backdoor inside the Heart's Temor swarm, but the programmer responsible saying it's impossible, given Faro's instructions to make it hacker-proof. Deeper into the facility, the greeting system confirms that Faro automated systems made the focuses that Aloy uses and the machines like the Deathbringer, with a statue memorializing the Deathbringer as something to be revered. The mysterious man sends information to Aloy to help her understand what a corporation is and who Elisabet was. Aloy learns that Elisabet Sobeck was an American scientist, roboticist, and engineer who worked for Faro, creating robots to help the environment clean up due to climate change and detoxifying everything that was happening due to the shifting climate, but resigned when the company started focusing on military applications. She founded Miriam Technology to continue working on life-positive robots. The next audio log reveals that Faro is Ted Faro, who wanted to focus purely on machine-operated vehicles and weapons without the need of humans, which sounds like a stupid idea in every way. Like every sci-fi film invented said, do not allow machines to operate weapons. Through another data point, we learned that Ted Faro was the first ever trillionaire who gained renowned reputation through service robots, robotic bodyguards, then through Elisabet Sobeck's groundbreaking green robot solved the climate crisis, but you don't hear the part where she made the robots. And finally, he went into military technology, which is what we'll find out destroyed everything. He was a businessman, but not a scientist, who had really no ethics for what he was doing, and we'll find why all of this is important later. In a meeting room, Aloy finds that Faro created the corruptors called Scout-class scarabs, capable of self-repair and ally repair, biomass conversion to fuel, and enslave enemy robots through hacking. If that sounds like every reason not to build the machine, you have common sense. Hell, during the Deathbringer presentation, they literally described the biomass conversion system as having minimal environmental impact. Their entire first focus was reversing climate change, and they decided to create something that converts biomass into fuel. I don't know the level of stupidity here. The final presentation is even worse. The Horus combines everything but can build even more machines while remaining mobile, and Aloy states that, well, she states the obvious. How would you ever stop them? And if you remember at Allmother, you can see the remnants of a Horus that was able to pierce a mountain. A robot that can pierce a mountain. It's just like, why would you build something like this? And that's exactly what happened. A new audio log reveals the Peacekeepers are not accepting orders and are replicating at an alarming rate, going back to their default program as, Scout-class robots to build, self-repair, hack, and build more themselves for no one to command them. They just do whatever they want at this point, just follow their default programming, which complements the audio log about Faro asking for a backdoor when the programmer said it was impossible. Finally reaching the office on the top floor, Aloy is able to access a new video file showing that Ted and Elisabet hated each other, with Ted filing several lawsuits against her but dismissing them to speak to her. Ted reveals the swarm have gone rogue and needs Elisabet's help, and when she tells him to just shut them off, he says he can't. Elisabet reveals that the machines will consume all life on the Earth in 15 months, listing all the stupid decisions Ted made, from automated repair, biofuel conversion, and automatic production. Ted, realizing how much he screwed up, agrees to do anything Elisabet asks in order to stop things. The final file reveals Project Zero Dawn that shocks and disturbs Ted, but he agrees to it, paying to fund the project as Sobeck heads to US military command to reveal the plan, but doesn't say what it is, while also keeping it secret from the public that he caused the Faro plague, which is important to Forbidden West's story. Aloy realizes that Elisabet can't be her mother since she would be dead, and the voice returns to belittle her for not appreciating the discovery she made. Finally appearing, the voice is named Silence, who has been spying on Aloy since the beginning and makes it clear that he doesn't care about her personal problems, but wants the answer to questions of why life continued despite the Faro plague and what Project Zero Dawn is. Aloy demands answers from Silence, threatening to destroy her focus if he refuses, revealing he knows nothing about Hades, but is a searcher of forbidden knowledge who left his tribe. He can override focuses to spy on others, which is how he spied on Aloy, but can't do the same with the eclipse en masse, likely due to Hades. Aloy asks, given Silence's large knowledge about the ancient humans, that if Elisabet could still be alive, but Silence largely debunks this notion, stating they would never perfected life-extending technology, but were experimenting with medicine and cryogenics, which will be important in the next game, even to Project Zero Dawn. I know I say that a lot, but after playing Horizon Forbidden West, it shows that the developers had a large story planned out right from the beginning, with these details having profound impact later. Aloy heads to US Robot Command, where Elisabet went to meet the US military leaders to speak about Project Zero Dawn. Fittingly, Silence knows where it is, beneath a Horus. Inside, Aloy kills the Eclipse inside the facility and finds the remains of soldiers who fought the Horus outside, to her amazement and sadness, knowing that this was going to be their final moments, but they still fought with everything they gave. But Silence showcases that he cares little, showing that he's focused only at his personal task. The facility entrance reveals a new plan not yet stated, called Operation Enduring Victory, with Aloy using the Horus's claws to dive deeper into the bunker. Things get even more bleaker, if you can imagine, as the audio diaries from the soldiers in the bunker reveal civilians were put on the front lines fighting the swarm as well, many holding out for hope for Zero Dawn. Things were so bad that the military started faking letters to loved ones to prevent emotional breakdowns. Deeper into the facility, we find that the Eclipse have a fully functional Deathbringer online, but Aloy takes it down with no problem. Well, I'm joking, it takes a lot of effort to take it down on very hard difficulty, but still, my god, they have this thing on their side. Viewing the video recording of a meeting between Elisabet and US generals reveals that they agreed to Zero Dawn, but are just as disturbed as Ted was by the plan, and as the audio log stated, meant arming everyone who can aim a railgun and sending them to the front line, called Operation Enduring Victory. The goal is to have humanity fight to give Zero Dawn time, with a supplementary document inches away detailing the rate at which the biosphere would be completely consumed, with General Harris leading the operation and gain Elisabet the people she needs for the project. We also learn that Horizon Zero Dawn takes place in Utah, and the next step is the orbital launch base, but there's one major issue. Despite having the location to the base, it's at the Shadow Karja capital, and Silence cannot crash all their focuses at once. Aloy proposes they crash the network entirely, to which Silence agrees. Silence sends Aloy to the main camp of the Eclipse, where a modified tall neck is located. Destroying a special module will crash the entire network, and Aloy realizes that Silence was part of the Eclipse despite what he stated. Silence expresses that he's trying to resolve his mistakes, but Aloy isn't buying it, as she shouldn't. But she has no choice but to work with him. Heading inside, Aloy finds Helios' tent, where we learn that he had a wife and a child that died in childbirth. We also learned that Helios is not exactly a stable man. I mean, we already saw that by his face and the way he acted, but the guy has this overconfidence to himself that he is meant to serve a greater purpose. He's a lot like Nil, but unlike Nil, who is accepting of who he is, to the point that Nil understands that he enjoys killing, but will do it to prevent hurting innocent people. He actually does it he's like Dexter basically. Helios justifies all the horrible things he does for the sake of the greater good. I mean, this guy is a true psychopath, but also a deluded psychopath. During the raid by Avad, Helios took the queen and her child to Sunfall, which is strange seeing that Avad never mentioned having a brother, along with the lunatic ramblings of a killer believing that what he's doing is right, including trying to mold the prince he kidnapped into being like him, but the mother is trying to protect him as best as she can. Aloy reaches the tall neck but is shocked to see Hades. When opening the case, a shock from the module alerts Hades. Aloy crashes the network, but not before one final signal is sent alerting the camp, which Aloy barely escapes with her life. Aloy realizes Silence knew about Hades, but despite this justified anger, realizes they both need each other. Silence summarizes their relationship isn't about trust, but mutual interest, which will be their relationship for much of Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. Heading to the Shadow Kardra, capital of Sunfall, Aloy is assumed to be a bounty hunter, which is weird considering Aloy looks unique to everyone, and everyone in the Shadow Kardra and the Eclipse should know what Aloy looks like. She must be wearing the same plot armor as the Black Widow movie or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because no one recognizes her despite being wanted by everyone in this entire town. You would expect someone would recognize her, but no, they assume that she's a bounty hunter, and we learn that the prince and queen that Helios kidnapped are now figureheads being used by the sun priest Bahavis. Not everyone is fooled by Aloy though, with a woman named Vanasha asking to talk about a current bounty target named Uthid. Agreeing to meet Vanasha, she reveals that she wants to save Uthid for Meridian and fighting against the Shadow Kardra in order to end the war between the Sun Kardra led by Avad and the Shadow Kardra led by Bahavis, with as little bloodshed as possible. Aloy agrees to the plan and heads to Green Thumb to find Uthid, who shoots first but realizing Aloy is not a mercenary, agrees to speak. Uthid explains that he found out that Bahavis was ordering the culling of innocent people, and the reason he followed Ederman because he was blinded by faith, Ederman being the prince and Nasadi is his mother. So basically, Ederman is the stepbrother of Avad that he is not aware of. Uthid realizes that his faith was used to control him and blind him from the truth, not realizing until the end that Ederman was just a figurehead being used. Uthid fully expected to die, but Aloy convinced him to press forward, with the conversation cut short as mercenaries start to appear from the Banuk and Asheram. The last set of warriors are led by Bahavis, who wanted to see Uthid die by his own hands. Unfortunately, he is not successful and Uthid kills Bahavis. Vanasha then appears and tells Aloy the entire plan. Apparently, she's been posing as the queen and princess handmaiden in order to construct this plan because they want to leave just as bad. They don't want to be part of this entire campaign and being used as a figurehead, as we already inferred from the audio diaries from Helios' tent about him trying to groom the prince into something he's not. With Bahavis' death, Vanasha states that the Sun Priest will succumb to infighting and try and take his place, allowing them to sneak the prince and queen out and take them to Meridian safely. Uthid participated in the Red Raids as well, to Aloy's concern, but according to Vanasha, seeing that he didn't take part in all the vicious murdering and torture, he'll be granted amnesty by Avad as a military advisor, considering that Avad is desperate for these types of people and wants to resolve things with peace over violence. As we saw with Nil, he offered people who came forward for their crimes leniency as long as they served their sentences. In fact, there's an entire side mission where you talk to the warden of the Sunstone Rock prison, who explains that Avad did indeed offer leniency for those who came forward about their crimes, allowing them to serve their prison sentence and giving a fresh start for anyone who served their prison sentence. So there is validity to everything Vanasha says. The next part of the plan doesn't go safely, as we find out from the mercenaries that Vanasha hired they're all dead with the exception of one. He explains that a rock breaker killed them all, but Aloy needs the entire area clear so they can have safe passage for the prince and queen. Aloy smashes the rock breaker and Vanasha appears with the prince and queen in hand, but the Shadow Kardra aren't far behind. Aloy and Vanasha fight off the Shadow Kardra and corrupted machines along with a newly arrived set of Sun Kardra soldiers. With the prince and queen safely aboard, Avad meets with his stepbrother and Itaman's mother, assuring them that they're safe from the Shadow Kardra and under his protection. Vanasha and Uthid are also offered protection from the Shadow Karja as they join Avad's troops, and will later find out in Horizon Forbidden West what became of them. Aloy returns to Sunfall to enter the orbital facility, but the door is locked due to a mechanical failure requiring air venting to open the area, which alerts the Shadow Karja above. The first room is an interview and entrance hall, but a data point advises increased security is necessary, but not for the reveal of the Faro plague. In fact, the public is already aware of not only the swarm of machines that are consuming the biosphere, but also about Zero Dawn. What happens next is even worse. I know I say that a lot, but trust me. What follows is one of the most shocking pieces of information. Those who pass the opening trials are presented with a video from General Harris informing that there is no weapon, and the global extinction of Earth will happen, as cracking the Faro Plague security would take centuries, and they only have 16 months. Operation Enduring Victory is a lie constructed by him to encourage people to fight for a weapon that does not exist, and simply to buy the people of Zero Dawn more time. Aloy doesn't have the time to digest this information as Eclipse raid the bunker, with audio logs inside the bunker highlighting the people who joined in the project. Many knew the horrifying truth given the knowledge, but some held out for hope that Zero Dawn was indeed a weapon. There's a heavy hint dropped about the Odyssey, a colony ship heading to a planet called Sirius X that exploded, which will be important in the next game. It's almost like Guerrilla already plotted the entire story, and I love when game developers do that. Well, not just game developers, but movies and books. It really shows dedication to the project. The other audio diary showcased the response of the candidates who learned the truth, and it's pretty horrifying. People have complete mental breakdowns as the counselors attempt to keep the peace. The only one who seems to be okay with it is Travis Tate, a genius hacker who took the offer without hesitation. The best one is from Brad Advik, the programmer who worked on the Faro Plague and made it unhackable. You can hear the guilt is crushing him. I mean, he is responsible for the deaths of billions and the complete destruction of Earth. Ethics aside and being responsible for what happened, I mean, if you're going to hire anyone, you might as well hire the person who built the weapon in the first place. The next room features Elisabet Sobeck revealing what Project Zero Dawn actually is. A terraforming project led by the most advanced AI system ever created. Called Gaia, this AI will be supported by subordinate functions that will restart the biosphere long after Earth's extinction and all life on the Earth has ended, shutting down the Faro robots, ending the Faro Plague, and starting a new biosphere on the planet. The complexity of the system is that humans will provide the tools, and Gaia will need to know how to use them through seed stocks and embryos locked in cryo facilities known as cradle facilities, and eventually cloning new humans to repopulate the world and learn from the mistakes of the past by teaching them through a program called Apollo, composing of all humanity's knowledge. The other programs include Artemis for reintroducing fauna species through genetic stocks, Demeter for flora species from genetic stocks, Eleuthia for cloning humans and raising them, Hades for terminating the biosphere if the terraforming project proves to be unsuccessful and lead to another extinction process, Hephaestus for building the machines to aid the biosphere, Minerva for generating the codes to deactivate the Faro Plague and shield Gaia from hacking attempts, Poseidon for detoxifying the Earth's water, Ether for detoxifying the Earth's atmosphere, and of course we have Apollo for the archive for all human knowledge and educational tools to teach new humans. Aloy starts wondering what happened to Apollo, and if Hades is part of Gaia, why does it want her dead? The next room reveals that those who learned the truth were locked in detention facilities until they decided to join the project, with those who do work on it granted access to a sealed facility called Elysium to live out their lives with 2 family members or people of their choosing. Those who chose not to join Zero Dawn could not leave the facility out of fear that this would come out and completely collapse Operation Enduring Victory. The final option to these people was medical euthanasia, which happened to a lot of people in the bunker in the beginning of the game. The Zero Dawn staff were compromised in that facility, and instead of being killed and consumed by the Faro Plague, they decided to end themselves. So now you know why they did it. We get more audio logs from those who learned the truth. One from Brad, who wants to make amends for what he did. You know, the programmer who created the unhackable Faro Plague. Well, he was one of the people. I mean, you can redeem yourself after billions of debts on your hands, I guess somehow, but he tries to rationalize it. This is the only thing he can do. Ron Felder is the guy who freaked out about the Odyssey attempts leaving the Earth. Learning about Zero Dawn was just something he couldn't handle, and as I stated, he was detained in a detention facility. It's unknown what happened to him, but it's likely that he chose medical euthanasia. The final person is Susanna Albert, who decides to take the third option, learning that she has no one to take to the bunker and can't have a family since everyone in the facility would be sterilized to ensure that everyone has enough food in order to last out their entire lives. So she decides just to end things instead of having to deal with everything that follows. We also learn of other people within the Zero Dawn project. Christina Hugh V and Travis Tate, who we already mentioned before, are excited for the project. Travis for the sheer absurdity of Zero Dawn, and Christina for the chance to teach future humans the importance of art. I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here, but this scene kind of reminds me of the importance of art as explained by Morton Solus in Mass Effect 2 when we learn who the collectors are. He explains that art is important in order to showcase how civilization advances, and most importantly, how they lived. Whatever you saw in popular media during that period is likely how the general public saw their lives and how they thought. So just, an interesting fact. Plus, I'll do whatever I can to talk about Mass Effect 2, one of my favorite games of all time. Aloy kills more Eclipse, who strangely got into the bunker with ease. I mean, this place should be incredibly difficult to get inside, but they got into it like it was nothing. The next facility details Hephaestus from Margot Shen, an advanced AI not for building robots, but the ability to create them. Basic living creativity made into computer code, and be prepared because Hephaestus is going to be one of the biggest annoyances in these games. If you override the cauldrons, Aloy will mention how Hephaestus is making hostile machines in them, but doesn't know why. In a data point close by, we learned that Hephaestus created the towers that Minerva used in order to deactivate the Faro plague, so Hephaestus wasn't always like this. The next subordinate function we learn of is Apollo, led by Samina Abaji, a complete educational program consisting of all of humanity's knowledge, storing the information on synthetic fossils to ensure no decaying, complete with dialogue in English, Mandarin, Spanish, and Arabic, and creating holographic interfaces which Samina notes as leveling up, meaning they developed the program like a video game. Before you ask, no, we never get confirmation if Samina is a gamer, but she clearly understood that in order to make education engaging, you had to make it fun, and they succeeded in that, as we'll learn in Horizon Forbidden West. The following data point reveals that Far Zenith, an organization that will be important in the second game, gave Zero Dawn a copy of Homer that included a complete history of human culture, along with testing being a huge success among kids and adults, but some languages were left out due to storage limitations. Next up is the subordinate function trying to kill Aloy, Hades. Travis Tate explains that Hades was meant to dissolve the biosphere if the reconstruction turns out to be deadly, allowing Gaia to start fresh. To prevent Gaia from stopping Hades from fulfilling this process, she would be isolated as Gaia was meant to preserve life. Given Hades control, then once the job is done, return control to Gaia. We also learned that Travis Tate loves death metal and horror films, with a reference to the human centipede called Making a Millipede, which had 16 installments. Honestly, I prefer not to remember that movie. I've seen it once and I cleared my brain of it. It's disgusting. Eleuthia is shown next, a preservation project for the human genome and a cloning process for humans, along with human servitors to aid in childhood development in cradle facilities, with much of the technology coming from Far Zenith, including chambers to aid in human development and storage for long expeditions like space travel. Aloy puts two and two together to realize that the Nora's sacred mountain, All-Mother, may be a cradle facility, but she needs to fix the door to get inside. Heading to Elisabet's office, we learn the early development of Gaia, including how Faro wanted to develop a kill switch in case she went rogue, like his robots, and Gaia agrees, and Elisabet is successful in making Gaia feel. This was necessary as Gaia needed to care about life, not think like a machine, and later on we find out the reason the machines look like dinosaurs and other extinct animals is because Gaia felt sympathy for all these animals going extinct. deciding to preserve their memory as the robotic creations that would stimulate the new biosphere. And not just the animals that went extinct because nature deemed it, but also the animals that went extinct because of the Faro plague. Not everyone was saved and put into cryostocks to be revived by Artemis. Some of them did indeed die and are lost to the Faro plague. At the end of life on Earth, Elisabet starts to question everything and possibly the idea that Zero Dawn could be a failure, but Gaia reassures her, giving her hope that Earth has a future because of everything she sacrificed and everything she did. Finally, in Elisabet's office, we learned that Farzenet's ship, the Odyssey, which we already knew was destroyed in orbit, had an alpha build of Apollo, which will be important later. But Elisabet hoped that it would succeed as a contingency plan for humanity, but now Zero Dawn is their only hope. On Elisabet's desk is the Alpha Registry, master file free from corruption. This will give Aloy access to All-Mother, but she's still hopeful she'll meet a person inside the facility, her mother. But Silence quickly dismisses this in order to break it up with logic, stating that there's no way that anyone could have survived in there. Things go south even quicker as more Eclipse, but this time they are led by Helos, who knocks Aloy down with one bomb. I mean, Aloy has taken hits to the face by a robot T-Rex over 10 times her size, but okay, one bomb knocks her out. Waking up in the Sun Ring, Helos begins to bore Aloy with the justifications for his mass murder, which complements the audio diaries we found inside his tent. You remember when he started to justify every horrible thing he's ever done? Questioning his so-called chosen status as Aloy constantly undermined him, but before sending her into the Sun Ring, Helos sent an order to kill every Nora in hopes of ending Aloy before she crashed the network. I mean, this is just so ironic. Helos wants so bad to be this special dogmatic leader, this person who's chosen by greater things, but in reality, Aloy is the person who's really a chosen, if anything. She was literally created to become something greater than anyone else in humanity, being Elisabet Sobeck's genetic equal, but this guy is just like, I'm the chosen, I'm better than everyone, you have to follow me. It's just the irony that he's speaking this way to someone who's actually special. Heel does take all these coincidences as divine and crushes her focus with Elisabet's Alpha Registry master file, which just leads Aloy down to square zero. Helos calls out to more corruptors to enslave a captured behemoth to fight Aloy and show the Shadow Carja they are on the winning side. Without any weapons, Aloy uses the machine's might to destroy the supporting beams and gets a hold of her equipment, taking down the behemoth. Aloy then challenges Helos, who rejects the offer and instead sends more corruptors to kill Aloy, but Silence appears, not as a digital figure but an actual person, to save Aloy this time, with Helos acknowledging Silence was part of the Eclipse and betrayed them, yelling traitor. Aloy is happy and shocked to see that Silence came in person to save her, but without the file needed to resolve the corruption, she doesn't know what to do next. Silence informs Aloy that he duplicated her files, including the birthday message from the opening scene. Aloy asks Silence how he found her, saying it was logical thinking that Helos would sacrifice her in the Sun Ring, and that he learned how to override machines through Aloy, going through 2 of the Striders in order to get to her in time. Most importantly, Silence actually showcases some degree of empathy towards Aloy. Silence apologizes for his cruel words back at the Zero Dawn facility and hopes Aloy does meet a human and All-Mother. This can be seen as a manipulation tactic to gain Aloy's trust, so later down the line of this game, you'll see what happens, but it can also be seen as him starting to see Aloy as his equal to try and showcase empathy for what she's enduring. But he does reject Aloy's request to help save the Nora from Helos' attack. Aloy heads to Mother's Watch as dozens of Nora are killed at the hands of the Eclipse and their machines. Aloy helps push them back, and with the help of the remaining Nora forces is able to kill all the Eclipse within the Nora Sacred Land. Inside, you'll find the Nora you aided in the journey if you completed their missions, but while Teresa is happy to see Aloy, Larsa still sees Aloy as an omen, even spitting in disgust at Aloy's presence. Using the Alpha Registry, Aloy gains access to the inner chambers to find a cradle facility as suspected. Inside are drawings from the previous humans born here, with the drawings depicting the servitors as both protectors and tyrants. Old videos showed the servitors gave elementary schooling, such as teaching the kids to speak, but they became restless as they yearned to see the outside world and the locked areas in the cradle. Eventually, the stockpile of supplies ran out and the servitors released the now human adults into the world. And if you're wondering how they survived outside, remember this is before the derangement, which means the machines didn't attack on sight. They were docile and would just run away. However, the facility in the middle was inaccessible for some reason, and when Aloy opened the door, it is revealed to be the teaching area for Apollo, but the entire system is offline. Silence is annoyed as Aloy is more focused on her birth than the entirety of human knowledge being offline. Inside the main office is where we see Gaia, but it's not really her. Instead, it's to inform Elisabet that a transmission has turned Gaia's subordinate functions into self-aware AIs. Hades started to try and isolate Gaia to fulfill its purpose of global extinction and seize the terraforming function. Gaia overloaded her reactor and destroyed both Hades and herself to prevent this, but despite her actions, the biosphere will decay without a monitoring system. Gaia decided to recreate Elisabet Sobeck using Eleuthia, resulting in Aloy, but since she cannot interact with the human tribes outside due to the high-level directives, she couldn't do anything beyond that. Given the information she knew that the tribes would raise Aloy, her genetics will allow her to access the cradle in All-Mother, and she'll be able to use her focus to view this message, accessing the other facilities, and reboot Gaia. Unfortunately, Hades launches a code that frees the other functions, now aware AIs, that run in fear and anger due to becoming aware to perform their functions but without Gaia guiding them. The Cradle Alpha registry is corrupted as well, preventing access, causing Gaia to lose hope in her plan, but reassures herself that Elisabet will find a way to destroy Hades using the Master Override Key at Gaia Prime, where she self-destructed, and find a way to reboot Gaia to save the world. Silence is riveted by the information seeing Aloy's incredible destiny, but Aloy becomes emotionally troubled, learning that she's just a thing to serve a purpose. Leaving the facility, the Nora start worshipping Aloy as some sort of divine figure to her disgust. The same tribe that shunned her then started worshipping her as like she's some sort of object to be used like the reason she was created. Aloy acts on what Ross taught her, telling them that there's a world and people worth fighting for beyond the Nora land, and they can do so much more, asking those fit and willing to fight to head to Meridian for the final battle. Despite not wanting it, Aloy is made an anointed, a divine figure who could basically ask for anything, and Aloy hates it personally. But with this new authority, it allows her to finally get answers about Rost. Before the Red Raids and the derangement, so about 20 years or so, 12 bandits killed many Nora and took hostages from the Forsaken Village, called Mother's Vigil, where corrupted machines are now found. Ross's wife died in the fight and his daughter was taken hostage, named Alana. She was just around 6 years old. Using the hostages as shield and killing anyone who got too close, the Nora couldn't do anything, and the reason for the attack was never known. The bandits made it across the border with 6 hostages and killed them, but left the bodies beyond the border where the Nora could not go due to traditions. Rost was loyal to the Nora culture and asked to be made a Death Seeker, an exile who takes on suicidal missions beyond the sacred lands, but they had a more spiritual way of discussing it. The intent is that the person will die on this mission, but Ross survived, tracking and killing the targets in 1 year, but survived, seeking to die at the homeland for the Nora. But thanks to a hunter who lost her husband and 2 sons to the bandits, found Ross's bodies barely dead, she decided to break tradition and drag his body back to the Nora homeland where he received treatment, but he was unaware of this. He made a full recovery, but because he was made a Death Seeker, he could no longer return to the Nora tribe. Instead, the matriarchs decided to make him an outcast as a compromise, allowing Ross to live his life in solitude on Nora grounds. This is also likely why the Nora in the beginning of the game allowed Aloy and Ross to venture outside the sacred lands. It's because they most likely lost people due to those bandits and still respected Ross, but at the same time they couldn't speak to him because of him being an outcast. So that's my hypothesis on why they just let him go and didn't really have any fuss. You can even see the way they look at him, it's shown out of respect and not out of just disgust like most of the Nora look at when they see Aloy, unless they really needed her help. Regardless, Aloy was born and the matriarchs couldn't allow her to live within their tribe because they were a heavily focused maternal society where mothers were made matriarchs upon coming to age. Believing Aloy was an omen because she was motherless, they decided to give Aloy to Ross to live out her life. Aloy questions the decision given the loss of his daughter and being cast out of Nora's society, but given how Aloy turned out, Teresa sees the opposite. Aloy became a magnificent warrior and person because of the teachings Ross gave her, and we'll see in the second game that Ross played a much bigger role in shaping Aloy into the person she is today, even ways that Aloy doesn't realize right now. Heading to Gaia Prime, Aloy battles against powerful machines, all seemingly protecting Gaia Prime, including a Stormbird. Making it to the top, Aloy sees Gaia's explosion crack the mountain in half, but it seems Silence has been here for a while. Trying to find a way inside, Silence spent 19 years in the mountain, being the first to head down after it cooled due to Gaia's self-destruction, with the machines slowly starting to create a defense perimeter that allowed him sole access. We learn from Silence that he set up a workshop here and spent a better part of a decade trying to get into the facility, trying blasting and drilling, not realizing that he needed a very specific key. Aloy is able to unlock the door thanks to her genetics sharing that of Elisabet Sobeck, and we come across our first audio entry confirming that 10 people lived in this facility. Called the Alphas, they were the top workers on Project Zero Dawn and Gaia in the facility as Travis and Margot lament for the rest of their life. With Margot being the youngest at 30, not sure what to do after completing her work, and Travis revealing she's likely the last one to die among them, considering that every one of them is much older. He's a cheery guy, isn't he? I mean, he is, but you know, that's kinda uncalled for. Margot's next audio log complements Travis's previous comment with a dream she had with those in shelters likely slowly burning out and Margot alone as the final one to go before Gaia sleeps, ready to get the job done. But despite knowing that she'll be alone for most of her life, she's more worried about Gaia, hoping she won't be lonely. The next alpha we learn about is Charles Ronson. He worked on Artemis and is lamenting on his relationship with biochemist Tom Perch. Tom chose medical euthanasia and Charles promised to be at his side when it happened, but samples of Paradisia zygotes were in danger and he chose to save the samples instead. The irony being that he wasn't successful in saving the zygotes and Tom died alone. You can hear the resentment in his audio diary as he low-key blames everyone else for what happened, but it's just bad luck and unfortunate circumstances. Aloy finds Elisabet's rooms, but her things are unpacked and her journals are corrupted. During the course of the adventure, these logs will get decoded, but there's a reason for why her things are unpacked. What happens next is another shocking revelation. A door failed to close properly, allowing enough energy to bleed through unless a manual override is done, but it'll trap whoever is behind it. No one wants to sacrifice themselves, so Elisabet does it herself without anyone's knowledge, revealing that through a message she was wearing an environmental suit confirming what she did. Knowing the swarm is coming for her, she heads home saying goodbye to everyone. Everyone leaves one final memorial to her, with Silence acknowledging she was better than them and did it for Zero Dawn. But Aloy sets him straight that what made her great is that she put everyone else first. That's why Gaia had to feel, to understand the importance of life and why Hades' isolation program was needed, as Gaia, like Elisabet, values all life regardless of how small. Depending on your response, Silence will either be sympathetic or not care. Aloy wonders if she could still be there, making note that Elisabet wanted to go home but decides to just move on because she has important things to deal with. Gaia feels depressed after Sobeck's death, but wonders if she could isolate those feelings. But Dr. Clean, who she's speaking to and head of human cloning for Eluthia, tells her that it's natural to feel this way, acknowledging that Gaia is fully alive. The next audio log is more alarming, with Faro being alive and asking for constant updates on Zero Dawn, but without Elisabet, no one wants to talk to him since he's a businessman and not a scientist with no way of understanding the information, but everyone's getting worried about him since Liz isn't available to pacify him. I mean, the guy is responsible for the deaths of billions, I mean the entire Earth. I wouldn't want to talk to him either. Margot makes note that Ted is in his own bunker called a pyramid, which is more spot on than you might think, but that's later. Somehow an audio log is in Gaia Prime from Faro calling the knowledge for Apollo poison and needs to be erased. Inside the main meeting room, air is pushed into the chamber with preserved bodies of the Alphas. Starting a video, the Alpha clearance is overwritten with something called Omega clearance that locks the Alphas inside the room. Ted then starts speaking about how Apollo is a disease, and while the Alphas try to convince him that it's not, he pulls an Ozymandias, having purged Apollo hours ago before telling the Alphas. But he decides he can be even bigger of a douchebag and decides that in order to prevent the Alphas from reviving the program or creating their own pseudo version of Apollo in some hope of reviving any fraction of human knowledge, he decides to vent the room using his Omega clearance, killing everyone inside. But we'll learn later that Ted didn't do this for the reasons he just stated. He did it for himself. Silence is disgusted by Faro, but Aloy holds on to the hope that their deaths were meaningless as thanks to them life continued. With the Master Override in hand, Aloy can destroy Hades, but before heading out, Silence appears in person once again and decides to finally give Aloy the answers, but this is a ruse to gain her trust as we'll later find out. Silence reveals that he was originally the one who found Hades and served it in exchange for knowledge. Silence created the Eclipse using Helios' faith as a foundation, as the Karja Civil War was the perfect spice to stir everything together. Silence reveals Hades wanted to know everything about the Spire in Meridian, and Aloy puts two and two together and realizes Hades plans to use the tower created by Hephaestus to transmit the signal to restart the robots that Minerva shut down using the same process, only in reverse. Silence then reveals how he found Hades and founded the Eclipse, repairing a damaged focus and tracking a signal. After repairing Hades, Silence traded current information for knowledge about the past. Using the faith of the Karja, he tricked the Shadow Karja into believing Hades was their devil, called the Buried Shadow, and that it was enough to birth the Eclipse. Once Hades got what he wanted from Silence, he ordered him murdered by the Eclipse, put in an all-kill order. But Silence isn't a fool and created a backdoor to listen to all conversations within the Eclipse network. When Olin found Aloy and a kill order was sent, Silence started tracking her and then aided her to his benefit. Despite the horrible things he did, Silence has no regrets. He's a terrible person but a necessary evil, as without his help, Aloy would have never been successful in all of this. She would have never found the facilities leading to Zero Dawn or even Gaia Prime, so a lot of this is due to Silence. You can make him look like an anti-hero, but we'll later learn that he is entirely doing this for himself for selfish reasons. Silence says his goodbyes and gives Aloy his lance, offering the excuse that he wants to learn more before the world ends. All of the stories that Silence told can be confirmed by the audio diaries that just happen to be around now, almost like Silence placed them to confirm his story to Aloy and bring her guard down further as she suits his lance with the Master Override key and prepares for the final battle. Now, while the final mission starts afterward, the Frozen Wilds expansion takes place before the final fight at Meridian, as the Forbidden West takes place right after the conclusion for Zero Dawn. So we're going to talk about the Frozen Wilds right now, then go on to the final mission of Horizon Zero Dawn. Heading to the cut, Silence tries to convince Aloy to turn back, but she refuses, even touching on how the Banuk shamans who live in the cut have blue wiring stitched into their skin. Silence annoyed, but he lets it go and allows Aloy to do whatever she wishes. Before heading up the last trail, Aloy is attacked by a Scorcher, a far stronger and faster version of the Ravager, but now with fire, because that makes things even better. We also see new animals such as goats as the Banuk welcome Aloy. The first image we see is a volcano about to erupt with lots of thick smoke coming out of the base of the volcano, but we later then see that a lot of Banuk have been killed, with the tribe honoring the deaths of these skilled warriors, highlighting the difference between Nora and Banuk in this one scene. Aratak, the chieftain, makes note of a daemon that is plaguing the land that frenzies the machines, making them more dangerous. Bergrand is the first person to speak to Aloy. A traveling merchant, he gets Aloy up to speed. A shaman named Aurea told the tribe of daemons and they went to Thunder's Drum to fight them, but most of them died. Aloy asks about Silence, but he doesn't know much other than he messed with the Conclave, a meeting of the shamans, but only Aurea knows, but she left after the failed campaign at Thunder's Drum. Aloy wants to know more about the daemons, but she needs to find Aurea, but only the shamans know the path to her, but her apprentice Nultok may know. With Bergrand warning Aloy of new machines and towers that the player can take out beforehand, and it is recommended that you do this in order to limit the amount of powerful machines you'll have to deal with. Aloy speaks to Aratok, who is the chieftain, but he refuses to give Aurea's location, so she goes out to look for Nultok. Aloy can start gaining the trust of the Banuk tribes, which will be necessary to progress the story later on, but it's better to do it now. One mission has Aloy locating a missing hunter named Ikri, who is searching for Malene, another Banuk hunter trying to complete a test which involves surviving on the mountain for 4 days to be labeled part of the White-Teethed Werak, a Werak being the warriors of the tribe. Malene broke her leg, but due to the test, Ikri cannot help her but refuses to let her die. They find Malene dying from an infection, and after saving her from a horde of machines, Malene limps back after treatment, but Ikri expresses that she doesn't care about the Werak, deciding to tell everyone that she died since she can't live in a society that allows her people to die for a test. Aloy honors her wish given that she came from Nora isolation and heads back to the shaman. Aloy convinces the shaman to let Malene join the Werak, masking her grief with the law of survival when she finds out that Ikri died because of this, but in reality she's just simply gone into isolation. You can meet Ikri again at the local hunting camp where you can take part of her hunting challenge, and she expresses she loves being free from the cultural rules that set her into this path she didn't believe in. Now she's much happier just simply being her own person, and Aloy bonds with her, knowing exactly where she's coming from, considering she doesn't fully follow Nora traditions despite being an anointed. Aloy locates Nultok, and he tells Aloy that she cannot go where Aurea is, but advises the towers in the area of powering up the machines with new energy. Aloy decides to destroy the tower in the area, gaining Nultok's trust, but he has little faith she will accomplish the task, but of course Aloy proves him wrong. He tells of Aurea's position as she can solve his people's issues and how to navigate the path leading to Aurea's location, using sound, but Aloy can cheat and use her focus. Hey, you use the tools what you got. Aloy is ambushed by a new machine Aratok spoke of, a giant frost bear called a Frostclaw, and you can fight it or avoid it, but it's better that you fight it seeing that you have to take down this tower regardless. Aloy is successful and makes it into the facility, with the first audio diary being from Kenny Chow, making note of a Project Firebreak, but doesn't provide more information. Aloy redirects power in the facility to restart it, but you can learn that a man named Dodger Blevins, the director of security for Project Firebreak, was hated among the staff for his snide and threatening messages. Long story short, by the end of the DLC, you can find a message which tells you that he died in a snowmobile accident. The reason behind the accident is that one of the employees, Laura, decided to play a prank on him, which resulted in him suffering a fatal crash. He decided to swap the signs, which would lead from one area of the map to the next, leading him down a very treacherous path and causing his death. They wouldn't discover his body until the snow melted. The only real part he has in the DLC is that he had security drones scan the area for reasons that we'll find out later about Project Firebreak, the original one, not the one that currently was in production and is currently functioning right now. Either way, he's just a minute character, doesn't really matter. Aloy heads into the facility to find Aurea making an attempt to contact something. Aurea was apparently trapped inside until Aloy unlocked the doors. Surprised, she asks Aloy to show her how she did this. Aloy repairs the system, and the spirit that Aurea was trying to contact apparently appears. The spirit attempts to warn Aurea and ask for help, but the daemon terminates the connection as the spirit refuses to obey. Aurea wants to free the spirit, but Aloy needs answers and asks about silence, but she cannot say why because of the conclave. They are prone to secrecy. Aurea explains she is loyal to the spirit as it saved her when being hunted by the Karja during the Red Raids. She took shelter in the facility and the spirit locked the doors. In exchange, Aurea agreed to help it by repairing it at Thunder's Jaw, similar to Hades and Silence. But with that relationship, they were trying to just reap the benefits for themselves, Hades to destroy the world and Silence for information. But here, the spirit and Aurea apparently got along very well. I mean, Aurea is willing to risk her life for this spirit, so it's safe to say they trust each other. The spirit warned Aurea that she was under attack by the Daemon 5 years ago, but was captured by the Karja during the Red Raids. She was unable to return until she was set free during Avad's takeover, but when she returned, she ordered the Banuk along with Artok to save the spirit. They were slaughtered by the machines, and that's when Aloy arrived. Aurea wants to go back, but Artok controls the path and it's too dangerous for just the two of them. Aloy puts it in Aurea's mind to become chieftain to order the attack and proves that it's the only way to move forward. Aloy gains more of a reputation through helping Aurea and Artok's people by helping a painter and destroying a bandit camp. Aloy challenges Artok with Aurea's blessing. The challenge must be answered, with Artok revealing their brother and sister. Similar to the Proven, Aloy must complete 3 trials, each ending with a balloon launching, but if one of Artok's balloon launches before one of Aloy's balloon, he wins. Aloy is successful in the first 2 challenges, making note that Artok isn't all talk, but when arriving at the 3rd challenge, Artok notices that things aren't right. They find 2 frost claws rampaging through the site, killing all the Banuk stationed there. Artok and Aloy defeat them, but seeing that his people are in danger from what's in Thunderstrom, resigns and Aloy is made chieftain. Aloy can't speak to Artok, but his reasons for not returning is the fear his sister might die, as when she was taken by the Karja. Seeing what happened to his people the first time they attacked Thunderstrom, it makes sense that he doesn't want to risk his sister. However, Aurea knows they have to do this as it is bigger than just her own life, and is more than willing to sacrifice herself to save the spirit for the greater good. It's something that Ross taught Aloy, that you have to think of others above your own when you can do great things. Aurea decides to reveal what she knows about Silence to better show Aloy how dangerous he is. Silence apparently came from a tribe known as Owl's Watch that vouched for his position as a shaman, and Silence provided knowledge in exchange for prestige. He was given an opportunity to meet at the Conclave, but when finding its location, the next time he looted the cave of all the old world artifacts. The Banuk sent trackers, but none returned, likely dead, and the Owl's Watch disappeared, likely paid by Silence to create an illusion that he was a shaman. We don't know if Silence is truly Banuk. I mean, he could have easily just stitched those wirings into his skin to create the illusion, and before you say Silence wouldn't go that far, this is a guy who founded a cult and nearly made a pact with a life-destroying machine just for the sake of knowledge, so nothing is off the table for him. As for the old world artifacts, my guess is that maybe he used that in order to repair his focus. I don't know, for now that's all we're gonna get. We just know that Silence is incredibly dangerous, and even though Aurea warns people about him, it seems that she trusts Aloy to defend herself, as she seems to be more than capable to defend herself against Silence. So before heading up, you can upgrade your weapons, and you'll need it from an Osram named Varga. You help her and she'll give you new upgrades for a specialized weapon that you find in the bandit camp, and a weapon that can shoot Stormbird projectiles. It's pretty powerful, but it's prone to overheating, and it can even cause damage to Aloy. The next mission is helping a Banuk under Aloy's Were-Act that was framed for murder. Turns out the murderers are Banuk who killed Karja in response to the Red Raids, and an old hunter acts in Aloy to destroy a powerful rock breaker that he's been hunting for years. You can also power up Silent's staff using a piece of a drone that is found in one of the bunkers. I'm serious, you use a literal piece of a drone, and those drones are important to the narrative of what Project Firebreak is. With everything resolved, or if you just want to progress forward, Artok and Aurea restart the ventilation system that opens the gate to a geothermal plant, and we learned something about cyan. Aloy, Aurea, and Artok sneak in and destroy the machines inside, acting as guards as the plant generates energy for something as well that we're not really aware of. Diving deeper, we find out that the system was brought offline to hide the facility from something. We know what it is, but the lead project director, Kenny, despite being part of Faro Automated Systems, was unaware of the oncoming Faro Plague. It was only because of the lead programmer of Project Firebreak, Anita, that he was able to hide Cyan and the rest of the facility by hacking into Faro Automated Systems. She would also go on to join Project Zero Dawn. In a video at the door of the other half of the facility, Anita reveals that Project Firebreak was intended to keep the volcano in Yellowstone Park from erupting, with Cyan being the AI regulating everything. Having to cross hostile machines, Aloy discovers another audio log where Kenny was asked to install a mysterious software into Cyan, unaware that this would give Cyan limited human emotions. This is illegal due to the Turing Law, which outlawed all sentient machines unless regulated after another AI meant for climate intervention went rogue called Vast Silver. Now, we don't know what exactly Vast Silver did, but considering that an entire law was passed just to prevent this, it must have been great. It also doesn't help that the Faro Plague still wiped out everyone, and it wasn't because the machines were sentient. They were just lacking any type of direction and just following their program. That's the scary part. They just followed their programming to consume, reproduce, and consume more. After fighting the machines inside, Aloy sees that it has been turned into a cauldron, to Aurea's disgust, as the facility has changed dramatically into something horrifying. Heading inside, Aloy can find more logs that the original Firebreak was an unethical testing operation where the US used the local animals who were supposed to be in a nature preserve for deadly genetic virus testing that spread to humans, with countries cracking down on genetic testing and making synthetic plagues illegal. Seriously, that should just be a given. Don't create synthetic plagues. But then again, humanity would eventually, well, Ted Faro specifically would go on to make the Faro Plague, so maybe it's not common sense. Hell, the bunker with the military-grade drones used to power Silence Lance that we get because of Belvins was used to kill diseased animals before they can make it to local towns. So, they had to get military-grade drones to just kill the surrounding animals just to make sure these plagues don't spread. Aloy starts to weaken the Daemon's hold on Cyan, with the first confirming the malware coming from Hephaestus, who has repurposed Cyan's facility into a cauldron and forcing it to work on creating deadly machines. The nearby log confirms that Cyan has the emotional maturity of a child and needs to be put into a coma to prevent the Faro Plague from enslaving her. But thanks to Kenny and Anita's fast thinking, they were able to hide Cyan successfully from the Faro Plague. Deeper into the facility, we see where the frost claws are coming from, and the next data points confirm that the US were indeed performing genetic tests on the animals before being shut down. During the second data point, Cyan reveals how to destroy the facility through compromised functions, and we will lead to the next audio log where Kenny learns of the Faro Plague through Operation Enduring Victory, realizing that the plan isn't going to work and everyone is going to die, realizing why Anita made him hide Cyan's energy, with Kenny crippled about saying what he's going to do about Cyan and saying his goodbyes to his machine. Well, technically she's alive, so, it's technically his child at this point. In the central area, Cyan warns of a new hunter-killer, and now in the wild, but the facility must be destroyed. Hephaestus tries to protect the exposed node Cyan released, launching the hunter-killer, a fire variant of the Frostclaw, but much more powerful. In fact, it's the most powerful machine in the game. With it destroyed, Aloy attempts to overload the facility, but Hephaestus knocks her down, and Aratok as well. Aurea uses all of her strength to maintain the connection, restoring Cyan. Aurea dies in Aratok's arm as Cyan begins destroying the cauldron. Aloy gives Aratok the morale to continue forward, and they barely escape the facility. Back at Aurea's retreat, Aratok speaks to Cyan, who reveals an audio log of Aurea speaking how proud she was of him. She has more logs, but Aratok just can't deal with his sister's death right now and decides to take a moment for himself. Aloy gets the chance to speak to Cyan alone, and if you completed the game, along with much of the side content, new dialogue options are revealed. Cyan reveals who she is and where she came from. She is an AI with limited emotional response and is conscious, but she's not as powerful as Gaia, with her present emotions being displayed as various colors. Despite years of loneliness, Cyan maintained the volcano and even improved on her functions. Cyan elaborates that Hephaestus wasn't present at the cauldron, but a signal that bounces around, which will be relevant later in Horizon 2, with Cyan accepting Hephaestus' signal and not knowing what it was, but assuming it was Banuk. Hephaestus attempted to rewrite Cyan and it turned it into a subordinate function, forcing Cyan through painful incentives. After Aloy reveals Hephaestus' origin, Cyan assumes Hephaestus is creating hostile machines in response of human attacking machines that are needed to rebuild the biosphere. It's following its programming but as a living AI and not a subordinate function governed by Gaia. In fact, before the Frozen Wilds expansion released, there was a side mission of the Banuk who were in the presence of docile machines due to a transmission nearby by a fragment. Cyan assumes that this is part of Gaia that flew after the explosion that destroyed Gaia Prime, which showcases that Gaia actually was the one keeping things in check with the machines before Hephaestus became a sentient AI. When Aloy reveals the metal flowers as requested by Cyan to test about the outside world, she makes an educated guess that the metal flowers, which come with poems programmed in them, are from the AI with an affinity for flowers, but we'll learn the reason for these later on in the next game. But astute players already figured out that this was from Demeter, who was responsible for reviving the flora species on Earth using stockpiles of seeds available in various facilities around the world. So yeah, it is Demeter, but Cyan is unaware of who Demeter is. Cyan does give us relevant knowledge from when she was alive with her creators, specifically popular knowledge. Aloy learns from Cyan that Ted Faro was the one who pioneered climate reverse programs that netted him the name The Man Who Saved the Planet. With an ego like that, no wonder he killed the Alphas, but we also know that he just funded the projects. It was Elisabet who created them, but it shows how the rest of the world saw him as this type of savior right until the end, with Elisabet Sobeck keeping her word about never revealing where the Faro Plague came from. Likely why they still called it the Faro Plague was because it was Ted Faro's robots. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that he should be the one responsible, but according to Cyan, well until she was shut down, the world saw Ted Faro as some sort of savior. When leaving, Cyan asks Aloy what to do when Aratok brings more of the Banuk, which is determined by the player, along with the final message between Kenny and Cyan, with Cyan asking Kenny to stay with her until the hibernation process is activated. Kenny is shown to be incredibly crippled for what's happening and the future of the world, but he stays with Cyan well until the end. Aloy speaks to Aratok, who doesn't blame her for what happened, but instead thanks Aloy for doing what must be done. Aloy gives back the position to Aratok since she's leaving the area, but agrees to help destroy the released fire claws that Cyan warned about. Silence contacts Aloy, showing that he's still spying on her, now aware that the signal that worked the subordinate functions who are wreaking havoc because no one can keep them in check, as Gaia was supposed to do that. Aloy also reveals to Silence that she knows what he did, and he threatens Aloy, confirming he did kill the trackers that Aurea's people sent after him, but unlike them, he's issuing Aloy a warning to keep out of his past or face the consequences. What's left is one side mission relating to draining the water from the lake so a Banuk girl can get back to making music, using the piping system, and recovering extinct animal data from various parts of the world. You also have to destroy the remaining fire claws to help the Banuk people. This brings us to the final mission of Horizon Zero Dawn, the fight against Hades. Heading back to Meridian, Aloy warns Avad of the oncoming attack from Helos and Hades. Despite warning about the Spire, the Sun King says that he needs to protect his people, with Blameless Marad offering a compromise of having Aaron's vanguard protect the Spire. Avad does apologize to Aloy for trying to replace Ursa with Aloy, but we'll learn that he won't stop here and actually does flirt with her actively throughout Horizon 2, or at least the first time we meet him. After that, we never see him again. Aloy informs Avad about everything, and what follows is Aloy speaking to her allies, some of which come regardless and others that are optional. Teb, Varl, Sona, a weapon expert named Petra, and Aaron are there regardless of what you do. But characters such as Vanasha, Uthid, Nicola, and even Nil will join the fight provided you didn't kill Nil after the final bandit camp. Others include Alita, who lost her Karja love but was able to continue living thanks to Aloy and her father's support. Geneva is a prison warden at Sunstone Prison who was able to join in the fight. In fact, Avad gave a pardon to all prisoners who fought in the upcoming battle. We also have Aluka, who is a Banuk warrior Aloy helped when her people found a piece of Gaia Prime that made the machines docile, but once the device went offline because of some idiot, they all fought back against the machine, and she's here to help return the favor. If you completed the Frozen Wilds expansion, and I mean specifically killed all the fire claws in the area, Aratok will be present along with the Banuk warrior, stating that he's here to assist Aloy in any way he can. Heading up the spire, you can find Faro, Sona, Eren, each of them providing their own type of support, but most importantly Tanala, who is one of my personal favorite characters in the entire game. She's only available towards the side missions for the Hunter's Lodge, but I love her so much. Aloy decides to rest up in Olin's old place, which was granted to her by Avad, and she finds it hard to try and rest up for the final battle, given that it's literally dependent on the entire world's survival. Regardless, Aloy does get some rest, but then Helos' army starts to come upon Meridian, as he leads the attack with many different Deathbringers and various different machines. However, Helos is already inside Meridian, likely using the tunnels that he used to escape with the Queen and Prince. Aloy fights Helos in one final battle against him and his best men, and of course, Aloy comes out on top. In his final moments, you decide what to say to him before delivering the final blow, showcasing that he's still shocked that he lost, considering himself a chosen that would find a way to accomplish his goals. He was a cold-blooded psychopath who killed Ross, so I say he deserves no sympathy. With their commander dead, Aloy aids the Sun Karja using Petra's weapons to hurl explosives at the machines. Despite this, Aloy and Avad's men are overwhelmed and she's temporarily knocked out as Teb finds her in the ruins. Despite being near death, Aloy pushes forward to find Meridian in flames. Here you can find Uthid and Nil fighting on the streets against the corrupted machines as they try to protect as many people as possible. Heading forward, we can also find our Ice Hunter friend dealing with scavengers, and you can decide whether to assist her or not, but of course I decide to assist her. When getting to the spire, or at least at the base of the mountain, we see that Hades is starting to transmit the override signal, turning on the Faro robots as they start to consume the biosphere. When you reach the top, about to engage Hades in the final battle, Eren and Val will always be present to fight along Aloy, but Sona will likely not be present if you recruited Tanala from the Hunter's Lounge. This is because you can't have 4 NPCs. Instead, Sona will be on the floor because of her injuries against the initial fight with Hades. So you'll have Tanala, Varl, and Eren fighting by your side. But if you don't have Tanala on your side, Sona will instead join you in the final battle. Hades will start sending out the extinction protocol, and after 12 minutes it will be at the point of no return. Aloy must destroy the corrupted Deathbringer before then, as the Bringer starts to summon more and more machines to fight on its behalf. Basically, it's a battle of attrition as you just take off the corrupted Deathbringer's various guns and just keep shooting it with fire arrows until it eventually falls. With the Deathbringer destroyed, all Aloy needs to do is upload the kill code to Hades, stating Elisabet's name along with Alpha Prime Protocol, purging the Extinction Protocol permanently and allowing Aloy to come out victorious. In the aftermath, Aloy leaves Meridian before the celebration can take hold and search for Elisabet's home as stated back in Gaia Prime. As Elisabet's last audio decodes, a log plays in the background, with Liz telling Gaia that the day she decided to dedicate her life to saving life on Earth, and what she would have liked for her child to be like, stating specifically she would have loved a daughter, with Aloy finding Elisabet's body preserved in the environmental suit when she went home, gripping a pendant of the Earth. When the camera pans out, you can see that there is a same ring of flowers surrounding Elisabet despite being in a desert. These are the same flowers that surround the metal flowers throughout the region. It also confirms that Demeanor's poetry hidden throughout the metal flowers is actually a tribute to Elisabet. Despite everything that transpired, it is nice to see that at least Elisabet died in peace. Yes, it was in a lifeless world, but because of her accomplishments, life continued. Even more so is that the AI, Demeanor, shows that despite being released and being aware of what it is, it still cared about her, and we can see through Gaia that it also cared about Elisabet. All of this is because of her, and all the life that continued forward was because of her hardship. So the fact she died in peace at the place she wanted to be at, it's the best possible situation. But that's not all, as Horizon Zero Dawn has one last after credits scene. It turns out that Silence tricked Aloy, big surprise, and instead of deleting Hades, it was transferred to a storage container Silence is holding, making note of Masters who sent the signal that woke him, and that it brings us to the end of Horizon Zero Dawn as he overlooks a Horus model somewhere in a different area that we're not familiar with, hence starting Horizon Forbidden West. And like I stated, all that story that he provided to Aloy about him found in the Eclipse, all those diaries, was all to let her guard down, and we'll find out more about it in the game's sequel, Horizon Horizon 2 Forbidden West, which is freaking amazing. But if you watched until now, please leave a like, and yeah, let's continue to Horizon 2 Forbidden West. Set 6 months after the defeat of Hades, Aloy has gone on a massive campaign to locate a Gaia reboot to reverse the effects of the degraded biosphere. A red blight is slowly draining the planet of life, algae is choking the water supply, making it unusable, and massive storms are causing havoc. In search of another backup, Varl tracks Aloy down, and she gives him a focus to help, training her friend in its use before arriving to a Far Zenith facility where a Gaia backup may be held. Aloy is shocked and learns they weren't friendly with Elisabet, despite them giving Zero Dawn Homer and cloning technology, and Zero Dawn providing them Apollo. Aloy and Varl find a camp completely destroyed, and Aloy crafted a new grappling hook from the rubble. Entering one of the visual presentations, Oswald Delgard, the creator of the holofilm sharing service that made him into a multi-billionaire and a member of Far Zenith. In fact, he's the only public member that we know of, explaining the Odyssey, the first ever colony spaceship that would head to Sirius X to create the first planetary human colony. But we also learn in the bunker of Elisabet's office back in Zero Dawn that ship blew up. However, in the next room, Oswald reveals their real plan was to get rich investors by promising them a seat on the ship to start anew on Sirius X. Varl is disgusted by this news, but it doesn't faze Aloy, who stays focused and decides that the next step is to locate the data center Oswald mentioned. Heading deeper into the facility, Varl and Aloy fight more machines, but notice a giant one, likely the one that attacked them, and a new weapon from Hephaestus. Heading to the main hall, Aloy discovers that the reason Far Zenith gave Zero Dawn Homer was to infiltrate the project and make a copy of Gaia and the subordinate functions. With Far Zenith aware of Travis Tate, and Elisabet may withheld Apollo if they find out, which was negotiated for Homer. Varl is more concerned why Elisabet looks like Aloy, and she decides to just break the news to him. Varl takes it pretty well, knowing that Aloy is a clone and motherless. Literally, I mean, she has no mother, but regardless, she asks Varl to just move forward because they need to complete this, and Varl agrees, deciding that his friend needs him and he'll do whatever it takes to help Aloy. Within reach of the facility, Aloy sees a new machine from Hephaestus, a giant snake called a Slitherfang. Varl wants to get backup, but Aloy decides to throw caution to the wind and topple a giant spaceship, but it only destroys 2 of them, with the third needing some good old-fashioned manual killing. And Aloy, of course, is successful because she's just as awesome. Before entering the server room, a data point reveals Far Zenith has been monitoring Elisabet during Zero Dawn's creation thanks to an inside source. This document also reveals this terrible person was the reason Ted could override the Alpha's access back in Zero Dawn and kill them. His name is Hank Shaw, who installed a backdoor called Omega Clearance. Hank was also a Far Zenith inside man who was promised a seat on the Odyssey for his betrayal, but Far Zenith planned to betray him once he delivered Gaia. Just a great person. At the data center, Aloy discovers that Travis found out about Zenith's plan and sent a logic bomb that destroyed their servers by disguising it as a copy of Gaia version 6.9. I mean, that's good. I mean, that's classic. Aloy isn't smiling though, as she thought it would have led to a Gaia backup and she has no more leads. Varl wants to help, but doesn't want anyone to get hurt, and feels all the responsibilities on her, but Varl encourages Aloy to come back to Meridian to exercise any other option by thinking loud with the other people in the city. After all, they did help a great deal when dealing with the conflict in Zero Dawn. Aloy shows Varl how to override machines, and they head back to Meridian, where Aloy is being praised as a hero, complete with a statue which makes her uncomfortable because she feels like she hasn't accomplished her goal yet, with the biosphere slowly decaying. Blameless Marah tells Aloy when they head back into the city that while they were rebuilding Meridian, a red glow rose from Hades' container and through the spire. Aloy discovers that Silence's spear was another trick, as it dissolves in her hand, and she climbs the spire in order to confirm her assumptions. On top, she sees Hades went far west, with Silence appearing. As I stated before, he told her all that information back in Gaia Prime, even leaving the audio diaries to confirm it, to drop Aloy's guard in accepting the lance. Silence informs Aloy that he needed to know where the signal that woke Hades came from, along with locating a backup of Gaia. Silence tells Aloy to come find find him, providing coordinates in the Forbidden West. Murad explains that the area is controlled by a warrior tribe called the Tanakh, but offers a solution where Varl and Aloy can attend another peace summit, as Avad has been trying to develop a peaceful solution between the two tribes since they were victims of the Red Raids, where the Mad King kidnapped people from the Tanakh's tribes for sacrifices in the Sun Ring. Regardless, Avad then appears with his family, including the prince and queen Aloy saved from the first game. Avad provides gifts to Aloy for saving everyone, with Vanasha and Uthid showing up, confirming their survival at the battle in the original game. The gifts include a new spear and headdress, with Aloy able to speak to everyone before heading out. Avad speaks about the uneasy tension that he has with the Tanakh, trying to broker peace by providing gifts, but like the Nora, they were able to push the Karja out of their territory by uniting under one banner. The upcoming meeting is in exchange gifts for the return of Fashav, who happens to be Avad's cousin, but unlike Kilos, he wasn't a participant in the Red Raids to the same extent. But either way, he doesn't know how his cousin survived so much brutal hardship, considering that the Tanakh are notorious for that. As for his stepbrother, Avad plans to give him the crown, and despite having suitors for marriage, is always trying to turn them into Ursa, even bringing up possibly traveling with Aloy, which he still sees Ursa in. When leaving, Avad will once again hit on Aloy, asking her to stay in Meridian and get to know each other, but it's up to the player to decide how to handle things. It's still awkward like it was in Horizon Zero Dawn, but it's up to the player to decide how to proceed with this. Aloy can't speak to the prince and queen for the first time, and they are grateful for everything she did for them, with Itamin looking up to Aloy in hopes of being a warrior like her. As for Vanasha and Uthid, with Uthid becoming a senior military advisor as Vanasha stated in the first game he would become, and Vanasha acting as Itamin's protector and nanny, just like when they were in the Shadow Karja, but this time, they're doing it without the possibility of being gutted by Helos. They confirm that the Shadow Karja is no more, with Avad offering amnesty for everyone who was willing to join the Sun Karja, but we'll see that not everyone accepted that offer. Aloy decides to rest, but in reality sneaks out once again, believing that the burden is all on her and no one else. Kind of reminds me of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, where Laura does the same thing, believing everything is on her. But in this case, it kind of is, considering her genetic legacy, but at the same time, her friends were more than willing to sacrifice themselves for her, so it seems a little just selfish that she just makes this decision for herself. Arriving at the Forbidden West, Aloy is told by the operator that no one can get in due to the dangerous machines called Bristolbacks, but Aloy convinces him to let her through because she's the savior of Meridian, and well, that comes with a great level of perks like being the Anointed. Basically, Aloy can do almost anything, but she has the respect of everyone around her. So when she heads down, she learns that the settlement local to the area is having problems as well, finding out that Eren is missing, who's within the region to protect the Sun Priest, who's here to broker the peace embassy that Varl and Aloy has to travel to in order to gain access to the Forbidden West. Unfortunately, the Sun Priest Studios Valdez is unwilling to move until Eren, the captain of the guard, returns and the area is safe from Bristlebacks, so instead, Aloy heads to Chainscrape, the local community where Eren was last seen, and is surprised to find that Petra is here, the one who provided the guns at the final battle of Meridian, but their reunion is cut short, mostly by Aloy focusing more on her mission, but not before learning about Ulvin, who has the entire town on lockdown to try and gain absolute control over the entire industry that this town produces on top of the people who run it. So yeah, not a really great person. Speaking to Ulvin, he tries to pretend that he's a man of the people, but Aloy learns that he's keeping the local merchants from opening shop due to a combination of the bristleback attacks and wanting absolute control over the settlement for the good of the people, but in reality we find out that he's the one causing calamity. Finding the cook is being forced to work without pay for his men with unrealistic goals, and them threatening force to anyone who refuses. But Aloy helps him find the courage to stand up for himself by gathering ingredients he needs and fixing his favorite pan. Aloy also finds out a foreman is being forced to blast deeper into a mine, causing his men to be trapped inside, who Aloy saves. and they also refused to work for Ulvin anymore. Finally, we discovered the bristlebacks, warthog machines fitted with acid containers, came from the mountain where Ulvin forced the miners to blast deeper, creating a tunnel for the machines to come through. With all this information, Aloy gets the merchants working again, gaining access to a new throwing spear thanks to the sisters Dalal and Boomer for helping them get the parts. Aloy finds Eren being attacked by hostile machines, but despite being grateful, is annoyed that Aloy left Meridian before saying goodbye. Despite Aloy's importance, I can see where he's coming from. You just survive a suicide mission and someone you care about just leaves without saying anything, it definitely would make you feel bad. Aloy can respond with empathy or hostility. I mean, she could have said goodbye, but dealing with the end of the world is kind of a big deal right now. With Eren found and the bristlebacks dealt with, Studios is forced to head to Baron's Light for the embassy. Aloy can take part in more side missions, including finding a set of surviving Karja who refused to rejoin Meridian, still seeing Avad as a kingslayer. Despite being peaceful, are lost, and worse, they're preventing a local mercenary from claiming his Stormbird kill. The cult is called the Order of Twilight, and they saw the Stormbird dying as an omen, and they are waiting for their priest to return from a meditation to go in search of the Stormbird. Unfortunately, Aloy finds the priest dying from his wounds due to the climb, and is also a complete loss in his own dogma combined with dehydration. Aloy recovers the Stormbird's heart in hopes that it might get him out of his trance, but the priest dies before she can return. The man, Talent, who killed the Stormbird, returns and threatens to kill everyone, but Aloy steps in, scaring him off. Aloy gives them the Stormbird heart to the leader, Lokosha, and tells her that the priest is dead and she needs to lead their people to safety, specifically Chainscrape. And they can't follow something that isn't there, convincing her to go to the settlement because what they're following right now will just lead to their deaths. And then she gives them the heart in order to sell for supplies. You can find her later in the settlement doing well and starting to accept that maybe not everyone is as evil as they thought they were, clearly trying to overcome the Mad Sun King's dogma, which kind of kept their people indoctrinated. However, this isn't the only time you'll encounter the Shadow Carja that survived, but also the Eclipse, with a Meridian soldier named Conover stating that he killed a fellow soldier in defense. Apparently this person was part of the Eclipse, but Conover has no evidence, but asks Aloy for help. With the help of her focus, discovers that he is right. Not only is Aloy able to destroy the camp, but she's able to get evidence that clears his name. Later on in the game, you can destroy the final camp, the main station area where they're recruiting more people to join the Eclipse along with slaves, and defeat the final leader of the Eclipse, freeing the slaves and finally ending the Eclipse in this region. With everyone at the embassy, Aloy meets with Nozar, the leader of the fort, who explains they cannot proceed until all three clans of the Tanakh are present and a horn is sounded. If all of these requirements are not met and they enter the territory before they are met, it'll be taken as hostility. But Aloy isn't having it as she has to get into the region, with Varl showing up, but Aloy is unable to get through the gate before he gets to the fort. Eren and Varl being bros, they have Aloy's back in the situation, and Eren orders them to let her through with Varl following. Of course, Varl is a bit annoyed that Aloy left, but he's still there for her. As expected from Nozar's warning, the Tanakh High Marshal sees Aloy as an act of hostility because no horn was sounded and the clans are not here. But Fashav appears and asks to speak to Aloy alone. Learning that Aloy has Avad's confidence to be at the embassy, he decides to give Aloy a chance to speak and about the Tanakh. He then opens up about what happened to him after he was captured and what it means to be a marshal, which is one of the highest ranks one can achieve in the Tanakh military order. We learned that Fashav marched as part of the Red Raids, but in an attempt to mitigate the damage, but failed, as they committed atrocities which spurred the Tanakh to attack. Fashav helped everyone escape but was captured, but while being taken learned of a trial by combat and demanded the rite called the Kurok, where the contestants would fight in a gauntlet against machines. Fashav won, but his only option was to serve the chieftain as a marshal. He was still disrespected, but eventually he would earn the respect of the Tanakh through force, or as he put it, whenever they dishonored him, he would force them to, well, do certain things, such as when they spat at his feet, he would shove their face into their own spit. Despite their brutality, Fashav to be that bridge between peace for the Karja and the Tanakh, considering that he comes from both worlds. Aloy tells Faro for her reasons to head west, and he believes her as the rumors from the battle with Hades has reached him, granting her his knife that will allow her safe travels for the most part, but not everywhere. But he does tell Aloy that allies are essential after seeing just Faro. Aloy will come to learn that she is not the only one carrying this burden of the world, and that her friends also carry it, as if she fails, everyone dies. Just then, the Sky Clan makes it to the summit with a Tanakh marshal we'll get very familiar with later on in the game. With all three clans present, the embassy starts, but Aloy just wants to move on, but Faro stops her as it needs to be done correctly or risk hostility. Nozar, along with Studios, meet with the Tanakh with the items promised, but the meeting is cut short by a rebel Tanakh group led by Regalla, with overwritten machines that they are riding, with Aloy figuring out Silence gave them the tech. Most of the Karja and the Tanakh are killed in the first wave of attacks. Nozar, the priest, and Faro are unfortunately among them. Aloy, Varl, and the rest of the Tanakh hold their own against Regalla's champion, deciding to join the fight at the very end, sporting a shield wing, and knocks out Varl. Aloy is victorious, and Regalla leaves to show respect for Aloy besting her champion. Lawan takes over as second command, as he was one of the first people we encounter in the fort, who informs us of the nearest settlement is Plainsong, headed by the Utaro, with everything leading there being no man's land, with the Utaro declining any peace talks with Avad due to their food shortages plaguing their land. Unfortunately, they refuse to open trade routes, and we'll later see why. Despite Aloy asking for Karja support, any soldiers crossing into Tanakh lands would be seen as a declaration of war. Lawan assures Aloy that the gate will remain open for her, and Varl will receive treatment for his injuries. Before heading to Plainsong, Aloy can assist the Utaro in repelling the Tanakh rebels and meets Silence at the coordinates. Here, Aloy learns that Silence caged Hades and another Titan, with the signal originating 17 years ago, and Silence has been trying to locate a Gaia backup as well. Aloy tracks where Silence took Hades, following the trail into an abandoned parking garage that houses another Zero Dawn facility. Inside, Aloy finds Hades broken and scarred thanks to Silence torturing it for information, and it cannot remember anything but Aloy defeating it. Hades reveals that it extinguished life 3 times, with this time being version 5 of the biosphere. Aloy destroys Hades, but in its final moments, it says something strange, calling Earth life filth. It seems really strange that the AI would call it this, because despite Hephaestus doing everything it does, it's doing it because it's trying to protect the machines that it built in order to protect the biosphere. But Hades is acting with more hate and anger. It sounds malicious, personal, but it will make sense later on when we find out who sent the signal. Silence then appears, and Aloy realizes there's new spyware in our focus. Fortunately, she's become more adept at purging this, considering how many times Silence has done it to her. Both are attempting to save the world, but in their own ways, with Silence having located a backup of Gaia behind the door he lured her to. But this is where Hades' extinction protocol was perfected and tested, so it had to have a backup of Gaia for testing purposes, along with the subordinate functions. And far from Faro, since no remote access can pierce the facility. Silence confirms this by torturing Hades for the location, but despite everything that's going on, Aloy finds the time to ask about Regalla, which Silence doesn't deny giving her the technology, but refuses to elaborate why. I mean, he did create the Eclipse without remorse, so, you know, Silence knows all about where the signal is and where it came from, but he doesn't wish to share it because he says it's no longer a threat, which means he's just dodging the question. I mean, it's freaking obvious, but Aloy has to move forward. Aloy thinks it's another trap, which is prudent, but the hatch is gene-locked, so he couldn't get in even if he wanted to. But Aloy can, and she notices that the entire door is locked with fire gleam, a type of mineral that can only be combusted with high levels of energy. Fortunately, Silence provides the schematics to make an igniter. Aloy builds it and blows up the mineral. Inside, everything is flooded, and inside we see Travis Tate had no love for Ted. If you don't remember, Travis Tate was the creator of Hades, even protecting Hades from Ted because he dug up classified information from Ted's company. And while the game doesn't elaborate what these projects are, only giving you a document in the following room about short summaries of what they could have been, it's enough to freak Ted out to know that you don't mess with Travis Tate because he'll air out your dirty laundry. We also find out that Liz knew all about Homer and Farzinet's attempt to steal Gaia, and helped Travis create the logic bomb. This also shows that Travis admired Liz greatly, as complimented by the memorial message he left after her death, but also that Liz trusted him greatly but kept things professional as to not get attached, which we'll find out the reason behind this was because she ended a romantic relationship very badly, so she tends to keep people within arm's reach. The irony is that Aloy doesn't see that, like herself, Elisabet kept those she cared about. Heck, you can even say she cared about Travis, considering she trusted him with this type of project as to shoulder the burden of Zero Dawn alone, and she was doing that right now with trying to restart the biosphere, pushing Varl and Eren away. Silence does even low-key compare his own greatness to Aloy, and how those who accomplish great things often walk alone. But in this case, Silence chooses to walk alone, but in Aloy's case, she pushes people away so she can walk alone, as to not burden them with her responsibilities, despite the fact they want to help her. In another audio diary, we find out Travis found out about Homer through Hank, who we talked about in the beginning of betraying Zero Dawn. He was tortured by Travis using the same sound weapon Dervahl used on Ursa. Hank crumbled and told Travis everything, including how to transmit the logic bomb, which he was going to transmit Gaia through, and after which he was sent to a detention facility, likely where he spent the rest of his life. In short, Travis found out about it, shared the information to Elisabet, and they developed the logic bomb that would destroy Farzinet's servers. The next audio diary comes from Farzinet themselves, someone named Tilda Vandermeer, speaking to Elisabet following the logic bomb, but Tilda passes the blame that she wasn't responsible for the possible theft of Gaia. Instead, Tilda convinces Liz to get Apollo to Farzinet as a way to try and have a contingency plan in case Zero Dawn fails, ending the message with letting go, hinting that Tilda and Liz were more than just friends, and which is why Elisabet is tending to keep people at arm's length, which is why when Travis tries to offer some sort of reach as a friend, she pushes him away, just telling him to do his job. But Travis wants to be her friend, but considering how much her and Tilda may have ended things, she's decided just not to go through that again, as you can hear the pain in her voice. Aloy makes it to the door to find the testing drone, but the Gaia backup only includes the core with no subordinate functions. Aloy decides to locate the aware sub-functions, locking onto Minerva. This will bring Gaia back online and aid her in tracking the others. Just then, intruders breach the facility, which is shocking because the only one who could get into the facility is Elisabet Sobeck and other alphas. Silence is aware of the intruders and tells Aloy to give herself up, as they want the same thing, but they need Aloy as a genetic key, one and they're too powerful to resist. Aloy, feeling betrayed again, decides to destroy her focus and put on a new one, and prepares for people to come in, but she believes she's safe since they don't have Elisabet's DNA to open the door. Aloy hides in one of the Gaia kernels as the 4 people walk into the room, having access to Elisabet's DNA to Aloy's surprise, revealing one of them to be a clone of Elisabet called Beta. Beta unlocks the second Gaia backup, and Aloy is discovered, with the robots called Spectres using nanobot technology to whisk away Beta. Knowing Aloy is a clone of Elisabet and that Gaia destroyed herself, they decide to kill Aloy as she's more trouble than she's worth. A man named Eric attacks but is protected by shields. Aloy thinks fast and destroys the floor by bringing down the drone, but they send Spectres after her. Aloy avoids them, all nearly dying in the process, and is discovered by Varl, who saves her life, but she also briefly sees Rost, most likely her brain hallucinating due to the near-death experience. At the Utaro village, Aloy refuses to rest up despite being near death, which is ironic considering she told the same thing to Sona back in Horizon Zero Dawn, and she also refused to let herself rest. Until now, the Utaro refused to speak to Aloy, but thanks to a woman named Zoe, a grave singer, she's trying to repair a machine called Ray. a machine they refer to as a land god that helps cultivate their fields and grow their food. Aloy fixes the machine thanks to her focus and gains the trust of the Yutaro, who speak of a killer machine coming from the cave, a cauldron, along with learning that their food shortages are due to their land gods no longer plowing the field and one of them heading into the cauldron and yet to come out, with the land gods being Do, Re, Mi. Yeah, exactly like the music sounds. Aloy tries to rationalize their spiritual belief by believing they go into the cauldron for maintenance, but they haven't come out yet. And throughout this conversation, it's heavily hinted that Varl and Zoe are more than just friends. Despite Zoe's rejection about heading into the cauldron, Aloy presses Zoe to heading into the cave to fix the issue, but they need permission to go inside the cauldron by the chorus. Aloy wants to leave, but her injuries are too great, with Varl forcing her to go to bed in order to try and save her strength and recover. She also sees Varl and Zoe kiss, confirming their relationship. Varl, thinking Aloy will run off again, encourages him to go to Zoe, but Aloy reassures him she won't leave. Before heading to Plainsong, Aloy can meet up with an old friend. Talana has made her way into the Forbidden West, but is looking for a former noble, hinting that this is more than just a search, while also teaching a new student to hunt. While traveling with her, Talana reveals that she's been searching for this man, Amadis, who is part of the Karja army during the Red Raids, but tried to stop them from committing atrocities, but he's gone into hiding ever since. Finally, a local who knew the battles between the Karja and where they were held tells Aloy and Talana that Amadis is heading to a Tanakh prison called the Rot with Asuram. Heading to the location, Aloy and Talana face against a new machine. It's called a Shell Snapper, which is basically a walking tank in the shape of a turtle. After defeating the machine, they find that the tunnel that Amadis had traveled through collapsed and there are several dead bodies, but he's not among them, with Talana believing that he made it through the tunnel, but unfortunately they have no way of going across. Talana isn't going to give up so easily, and for now we just have to put a stop on the mission until we can get across and talk to the ashram on the other side. But for now we have to focus on other things, such as locating Gaia's subordinate functions. Now heading to Plainsong, the entire area is covered in the blight as the chorus prepares to meet about Aloy's request. Entering the village, we see that unlike the Tanakh, the Yutaru are entirely vegetarians, with their homes made entirely out of plants. The chorus informs that Faye is still in the cauldron, but the idiots want to do nothing and just want to die, calling Aloy ignorant to their ways. Aloy speaks the obvious that the land is killing you, as Zoe backs her up, showing the reason they refuse to open for trade or peace is because of the chorus. But things work out in the worst way, with the defenders of the cauldron dead. Aloy leads the charge with Varl and Zoe as a horde of machines attack the Yutaru. At the cauldron, Aloy gives Zoe a focus and warns her of the dangers ahead, finding that Hephaestus has taken over the cauldron. At the center they find Faye being turned into a weapon. Zoe knows if it attacks Plainsongs, her people's culture will be crippled, followed by their deaths. Aloy knows that it has to be put down and everyone agrees, with Aloy overriding the cauldron and them taking down the Plowhorn. In a stroke of luck, Aloy also gains access to Minerva's location, which happened to be connected to this cauldron, and attempts to gain access. Zoe tries to make sense of everything but is still confused as Aloy travels deeper into the facility, but once at the center, Minerva locks Aloy out. Aloy shows her Gaia and convinces her to give up her autonomy, putting an end to the misery. With this, Gaia is revived and reveals that the facility was meant to oversee Zero Dawn's terraforming systems for the new humans after receiving training from Apollo, serving as Aloy's base of operations as she gathers more core allies, but learns to override machines with corrupted data, as well as she gathers more information from not only the cauldrons but the machines themselves. It takes time to gather her thoughts and speak to her allies about the coming situation, with Varro going to get Eren. Speaking to Gaia, she reveals that Apollo, Eleuthia, and Artemis have gone, but Aether, Demeter, and Poseidon are within reach. Hephaestus is the most dangerous and it's part of the Cauldron network, and worse, it's more powerful than Gaia. Despite being a priority without the other AIs, Aether, Poseidon, and Demeter, first, Hephaestus would just simply absorb Gaia if she tried to capture it. Without Hephaestus, Gaia can only keep the biosphere running for about 4 months before it started to collapse, as the machines are necessary to repair and maintain everything, which is why the red blight, storms, and toxicity of the oceans is increasing. Aloy does inquire about the strangers, assuming that Gaia would know who they are, but unfortunately she only knows that they're connected to the signal, with Gaia revealing it came from space, specifically Sirius X, where Far Zenith went, exposing they did not blow up but succeeded in their plan. With Aloy figuring out that they're Far Zenith descendants most likely, and they want Gaia to take control of the terraforming network to create a new biosphere for themselves. But again, this is all just a theory, with the clone being made thanks to the billions of seeds and zygotes they had on the ship. But Aloy is confused why she would aid them, thinking that because she's a clone of Elisabet Sobeck, somehow she should have her inherent heart and ideas and everything, not realizing that Beta is her own person, and just because you share the same genetic information of someone doesn't mean you're an exact copy. I mean, Aloy, you're not an exact copy of Elisabet Sobeck, so, you know, she's not going to be an exact copy of her either. Gaia does offer some tactical advice, stating that if she obtained Hephaestus, she could develop weapons to fight against them, making note with enough offensive capability any shield can be drained or pushed over its limit. It also confirms that despite Gaia being someone who preserves life at all costs, she'll do whatever it takes in order to protect the biosphere, seeing that Earth is her #1 priority and not the people of Far Zenith, seeing that they threaten Earth's biosphere. Gaia does advise Aloy that she can only obtain one function at a time, with each being located within a different territory within the Tanakh tribes. It's best that Aloy tries to earn their trust before trying to obtain the subordinate functions, and some of them are locked behind story progressions that does require you to earn their trust. But before then, we can head back to Plainsong to see that their chorus is starting to fall apart as people lose faith in what they can do after the whole cauldron fiasco. We find out that a man named Bree is looking for his missing wife, Kalai, who had potential to join the chorus. She had to go on this type of pilgrimage but hasn't returned yet. Whether she's alive or dead, he believes that if she's gone, that she needs to have her seed pouch recovered. Everyone in the Yutaro culture have a seed pouch that is distinct to themselves, so when they die, new life sprouts from it. He demands that the chorus do something about this, but they believe that if she did die in the mountain, recovering her body would be impossible and dangerous for everyone else. Regardless, Aloy decides to take on this challenge and goes up into the mountain. Unfortunately, his wife is dead, but not because she fell or got attacked by machines. Instead, she was murdered by a fellow Yutaro. Unfortunately, the murderer was killed by a stalker machine. Taking the murderer's seed pouch, they return to town, where Fane, one of the chorus members, identifies the seed pouch as a loyal member to Kel, one of the chorus members who just recently left. Putting two and two together, they discover that she murdered the man's wife. Heading to a remote village within the Plainsong community, Aloy finds Kel, who is now eating poisoned berries, believing that Kalai's new ideologies threatened their traditions and she needed to be eliminated, so she took it upon herself to murder the innocent woman in hopes that the young people would not follow in her steps. Unfortunately, this fails. Aloy tells her exactly how it fails. Once the people find out what you did, what Kel did, they'll embrace Kalai's beliefs even more, and she won't be there to defend them. Bree just discovered Kel right at the moment of death and demands that she face justice, but unfortunately she's gone. Despite this, Aloy tells the husband to continue to campaign for Kalai's wishes. Most importantly, Fane, who was one of the chorus members that demanded everyone just die and accept their fate, actually thanks Aloy for what happened, even though he had one of the worst ideas you can possibly imagine at the beginning when we met him. Here he understands what Kel did was completely wrong, killing an innocent person just to uphold beliefs that now just prove that she is wrong and they need to modernize. And in another mission, just for the sake of brevity, she saves a bunch of hunters who went after a dangerous claw strider that almost killed them all. And now Aloy must focus on trying to gain the goodwill of the Tanakh. The first being in the Desert Clan, where you find an enthusiastic warrior named Draka who needs help hunting machines to trade for water. When traveling, we learn that Yara, their current chieftain, rations water heavily to Draka's annoyance, who believes it's time for change in leadership, but clearly has no experience outside from the military. This becomes painfully apparent when you hear him try to pass popular rules without consequences, believing that he'll just be a popular leader that just gives people whatever they want. Draka is a good soldier and cares for his warriors, saving one of them from a thunderjaw that killed the others. with Aloy's help, but it also highlights that he is a soldier and not really a politician, which you kind of have to be if you're going to be a leader as well. Jakata requests Aloy to meet him at the Desert Clan captain to find Yara disciplining Draka for the reduced water ration, as Aloy learns that the well is dry. Usually it replenishes itself, but Yara is unable to find a new source due to the toxins in the water, but Yara is trying to keep things together as she learns how to fix the issue. Aloy uses her focus to find the pipeline leading to the well, tracking it to a pumping station that was disrupted by one of Draka's warriors. He found the source, but when tried to operate it, the genius used a spear to try and turn the valve. It broke the system, and he ran in fear but alerted the machines in the surrounding area, which resulted in his death. Aloy does repair the system, but Yara thinks Draka did this on purpose, but in reality he ordered his men to look for other sources of water to prevent the rationing, so this was just a horrible mistake. The two reach a wit's end and decide to settle things in combat, with the survivor taking over as chieftain. Jakata wants things to be resolved peacefully because if Yara and Draka's loyalists start to join in the fight along with them, it will weaken their tribe to the point that they'll be easy picking for Regalla and her rebels. Despite the Desert Clan wanting to not take sides, it's made clear that Regalla will attack anyone who is not on her side, believing them not to be true Tanakh because they indirectly align with the Karja, which is ridiculous, but we'll later find out why Regalla thinks this way. Aloy tries to convince them both not to fight, but it falls on deaf ears due to tradition and stubbornness, with Aloy having to choose a side and only allowing the champions for each side to fight instead of all the loyalists. I personally chose Draka because at least he was honest with everything, with Aloy gaining the trust of the Desert Clan now. You can further your trust by helping Draka with the location of a child who went missing and aiding a ravaged settlement due to a mudslide. Now it's time to locate Ether, which Gaia pinpoints in the Sky Clan's throne room. Here we learn of where the Tanakh built their military heritage from. The Ten, a series of veteran warriors whose legacy was preserved in a museum where the soldiers fought in Sky, Desert, and Lowlands, specifically the sea, which the Tanakh have now separated their tribes into. We also learn about the rank of Marshal, developed by Chief Hakaro for unknown reasons at the moment. They are the best of the best. The warriors taken from the Sky, Desert, and Lowland clans who fight in the Kurok, a heavy gauntlet that allows them to combat dangerous machines for this prestigious position. They now serve as peacekeepers among all three clans instead of only being loyal to one, which allows for a type of, think of it like a US Marshal system where they serve and protect all three clans, not just one, and they serve under Chief Hakaro only. When entering the throne room, Aloy finds Ether below the throne, but she's unable to get inside as Chief Hakaro, who knows about the chamber below, offers a trade, as Aloy cannot force her way in. Hakaro will give Aloy access to the chamber if she protects the Kulrot, and force the Sky Clan commander to submit their candidates, as the ceremony cannot happen without all three clans present. The commander hides behind a tall barrier, believing that it will protect him from all, and he refuses to join the Kurok. Hakaro, when speaking to Aloy, states how he wishes that Farzov lived, Avad's cousin, as he hoped he would bridge not only peace between the two nations, but they would share information among one another. You see, the Tanakh don't store information. In fact, their entire legacy is written on their bodies in the way of tattoos. Because of this, large amounts of information have been lost because of this type of tradition. But Meridian has kept all this information locked away in a library that is free for everyone to use. If Avad's cousin were to live, it would have allowed that free exchange of information and probably would have pioneered a new golden age for the Tanakh. Hakaro tells Aloy of Regalla and why she is rebelling. Her family was slaughtered by the Mad Sun King, and like evolved from the first game, Horizon Zero Dawn of the Oseram, he wanted blood for the sacrifices and the death of his people, and that's exactly what Regalla wants. We also saw that with the Bernuke in the Frozen Wilds. No one's willing to let the Red Raids go, and honestly I can't blame them. When you know that a large amount of your people and family was slaughtered by these people, it's hard to let go. But as Arthur Morgan once said, revenge is a fool's game. This is in The Last of Us Part 2. Taking on revenge for no reason whatsoever doesn't mean you're gonna get something out of it. None of these characters are Abby from The Last of Us Part 2. They can't have plot armor and just get away with everything. Regalla did challenge Hekarro, but he won, but decided to let her live due to their past. But that's then and this is now. Aloy must do whatever it takes to get Ether, with Hekarro revealing that it appeared when Gaia died, with the chieftain being warned by a vision from a Faro about the growing machine threat and to train marshals to enforce the peace, which led to the creation of the Korok to choose the best peacekeepers to keep the clan safe, hence creating the marshals. And to add to the calamity, all throughout the game you can face bandit camps who are basically mercenaries from the Oseram tribe called the Sons of Prometheus, who are aiding Regalla given their shared hatred for not only Avad but wanted revenge for the Red Raids. As with the Eclipse, Silence started them as well to aid in his own personal plans that we're still not fully clear about. Aloy does meet Kotallo as requested by the chieftain, and if you remember, he was at the embassy when Regalla attacked and lost his arm in battle. Speaking to him, he's lost most of his morale after the removal of his arm. This coupled with the bulwark, a massive wall of boulders, and the Sky Commander openly defying the chieftain, they're facing an uphill battle. Kotallo does offer his opinion of why he believes that the Sky Commander is openly defying the chieftain. He believes that he's going to allow Regalla and Hekarro weaken each other so he could swoop in and take over the position of chieftain. If you hit a bandit camp, Aloy will also acknowledge Regalla is gaining a permanent control over the machines and scouting heavier ones, foreshadowing a future event to Kotallo's worry, all while Kotallo is suffering from the phantom pain because of the loss of his arm. Heading to the settlement, Regalla's forces are slowly taken over, as Kotallo predicted. When speaking to the Tanakh, it reinforces what Kotallo said about hiding behind the wall as he mocks Kotallo's lost arm. Aloy, refusing to give up, decides to take a look at the wall and finds a weakness, but it requires some serious firepower. Kotallo doesn't know what exactly Aloy is doing, and she doesn't really inform him what exactly she's doing, and she even compares Kotallo's resistance to the Tanakh arrogance given by the Sky Commander, which by my own opinion made me like Kotallo even more because it just seems like he still has feelings and what Aloy did was just uncalled for. As suspected from Aloy from an earlier conversation with Regalla's soldiers getting more powerful machines, they somehow secured a Tremor Tusk, a mammoth-sized robot. They take it down and use the cannon to blow a hole in the wall, forcing the arrogant Sky Commander to adhere to the Korok. As with the Desert Clan, you can take on more side missions to gain the trust of the clan who supported you blowing up the wall, believing that the Sky Commander was arrogant and should have followed the orders of their chieftain. Aloy can help a young soldier prove himself, who she sees a little bit of herself in, but the other missions are not available. Well, you can start them, but you can't finish them through because you need a flying mount, which you'll get later on in the game. With all three clans present at the Korok, it can proceed, but Hekarro predicts that Regalla will attack with many powerful machines. The primary focus being to weaken the three clans and even kill Hekarro, allowing her to easily unite them under her banner. And as predicted, he is right. She attacks with everything she's got as Aloy and the rest of the Tanakh marshals try and hold them off as the Korok proceeds. She even attacks with a Slitherfang, but thanks to Aloy, she saves Hekarro from being killed. And as promised, Aloy is given access to Ether, and it welcomes being reunited with Gaia. This restores the system and replays the video that inspired Hekarro to create the Marshals as they fought against the impossible, even reminding the Tanakh and Kotallo what it means to become Marshals. Inspired by this, Kotallo decides to join Aloy in her mission, and Aloy accepts. As with the other clans, when you gain their trust, new missions open up, with this one having you explore Dekka's past. Dekka was an elderly woman who introduced you to the throne room, and she was always nice to Aloy. Unfortunately, her last remaining family member is in dire peril. The rest of her family died in Tanakh's civil wars until Hekarro took over and promoted peace with the Marshals. Her last grandson joined Regalla, and she's fearful that he'll end up dead. The mission basically ends with him redeeming himself by warning them of a behemoth under Regalla's control and help destroy it. With this completed, Dekka gets her grandson back and the last of her family. Back at base, you can see Eren, Zoe, and Varl are learning about the old world through the focuses along with their enemies. If you speak to Eren and you fought the bandit camps, Aloy will share the information gathered, telling Eren about the sons of Prometheus and their leader Estrella, who was part of Deval's group, but because her family died during the Red Race, she also has a bloodthirst for Karja. Eren has a brilliant plan to scan for focuses in Baron's Light since they have to ferry supplies from that location, and seeing that he's Oshiram, he'll be able to just blend in and eventually pick up their focus. Faro learns of the first humans and is impressed how they survived without knowledge of Apollo. If you remember from Horizon Zero Dawn, they were basically just big children. They had no idea what was out there, what to eat, what was safe, anything what to do. So essentially all these communities were grown because these humans decided to venture out of the cradles and start anew, developing all these societies, developing new techniques to strip machines, house building. All of it was designed because they took the initiative to do it. At the base, you can learn more about Kotallo's past. He tells you that his family died at a very young age, and he was raised by the warriors and saw the Sky Commander as his father. But only when Kotallo became a marshal did he realize that he was sent to complete the Kulrok because the Sky Commander thought that he would be a threat to his position, knowing full well that Kotallo was a better warrior than him. But he never wanted the position. In fact, he was perfectly happy living under his command because he saw him as his father. Despite this betrayal, well, it's never really stated by the Sky Commander, but Kotallo is a smart person. He loved being a marshal. In fact, he decided that this is what he was destined to be, and now helping Aloy, he'll do whatever it takes to protect her and help her in her mission. But he's still a loyal Tanakh soldier, as we'll find out that he really cares about his people. After absorbing ether, Gaia detects Eleuthia sending a distress signal, but it could easily be a trap given that the sub-function shouldn't be aware of Gaia's root kernel and her location. Aloy decides to check things out with Varl and Eren, refusing to let her go alone. Before leaving, Aloy can collect her thoughts in her room, including remembering Ross during her near-death experience and missing him dearly. Remember, it's only been 6 months since the events of Horizon Zero Dawn, and all she's done is visit his grave, and since then she's had to go through life and death experiences constantly while having to deal with the end of the world also happening every single day. So it's not been easy for her. She also remembers Avad's cousin, knowing that he was a good man, and if he lived, there could have been easier peace summits between both the Karja and the Tanakh. Heck, even Hikaru understood the importance that Avad's cousin could have played in their peaceful negotiations. Heading to the coordinates, a Far Zenith is killing members of the Sons of Prometheus and Regala's army, as they use a weapon to disable her shield and kill her, but she also kills her assailant. Analyzing the weapon, it dissolves before Aloy can scan it, and Aloy correctly guesses that the only one capable of making such a weapon would be Silence. The Zenith was here to locate an asset according to the Spectre log from the destroyed machine, with Varl locating a large tunnel recently dug, with Varl and Aloy heading down and Eren watching the rear. This facility isn't part of Zero Dawn, but is Far Zenith, with no information on the life-extending tech littered around. The same stuff Silence spoke about in the first game, including how the cloning tech Zero Dawn thought was revolutionary was in fact ancient technology that the Zeniths developed long ago and just left it gathering dust. They even found it to be incredibly humorous that they could trade something that was ancient for something that they really needed. Specifically Apollo. This shows just how advanced they really were. Despite containing only 236 containers within the facility, Aloy inputs the code 237 that was sent through the distress signal to find Beta inside one of the pods, with a message from her stating that she sent the signal. Most importantly, we now know that Far Zenith has Artemis, Apollo, and Eleuthia, basically confirming the reason that Gaia could not search for them was because Far Zenith already had them. But fortunately, they don't have a Gaia kernel to merge them. Beta is alive, but the Zenith sent Spectres to locate Beta as Aloy takes them out and Varl protects Beta. The Spectre is far more advanced with self-repairing tech, but it's nowhere as tough as the Fireclaw or Deathbringers, which Aloy has expert knowledge of beaten. Heading to the surface, Aloy helps Eren against another Spectre and recovers a part of Silence's weapon. Everyone is adapting to having another Aloy, but Beta is having trouble due to the withdrawal without any type of simulations on her brain at constant rates. She cannot deal with it because of sensory overload. Basically, she needs screens as her brain cannot process the real world without them at the moment. Beta reveals they established a colony on Sirius X, but had to leave due to a natural disaster or some sort of huge cataclysm. But it's not their descendants that were fighting, but the same people that left Earth back when the Faro plague was still happening, and they perfected the life-extending technology hinted in Horizon Zero Dawn. But Beta wasn't given the treatment, but she was trained by Apollo. Beta, believing she was there to fix Zero Dawn, but witnessing them kill so many people, she realized they don't want to fix Zero Dawn, but maybe to restart the biosphere to reshape it into their own desires, as Gaia and Aloy hypothesize. Beta explains that the Zeniths are the richest and most powerful people on Earth, commanded by Gerard, who is among the most powerful among them, including Eric, the guy who fought Aloy, and Tilda, the woman who we learned convinced Elisabet to give them Apollo, and it seemed that Tilda and Elisabet had a romantic relationship, but this is yet to be confirmed. Beta reveals they have a ship in orbit that ferries supplies such as fabricators, and that's where they're housing all the subordinate functions that they captured. Beta took her chance to escape her captors when they went for Eleuthia by sending an encrypted message to Gaia, keeping the Gaia kernel by lying about needing it to capture Eleuthia, and placing herself inside an accessible pod that required the input code 237. Beta jumps to conclusions, believing that Gaia can build an army but doesn't have Hephaestus, which freaks Beta out, causing her to plunge into a defeatist attitude. Aloy calms her down, but it's clear that Beta, despite being incredibly smart, lacks Aloy's fortitude and has very little confidence in herself. Gaia scans the items from Silence's weapon, but the item was purged of all data, making it a useless piece of junk. But not all is lost, so using her knowledge from the Focus is attempting to fix the land gods for her people, with Aloy gathering material for the first part of the mission, but the next part will need to wait until after we gather Poseidon in the ruins of Las Vegas. It's also in this desert area where you can find the next part of Tanala's quest to find out where Amadeus went. You can also help the Oseram camp by finding where it happened to their soldiers after they went on a delve, so yeah. We'll have to wait until the final part of the mission, which is located in the coast, but for now we have to find Poseidon. Inside Las Vegas, Aloy finds Oseram delvers, which are basically treasure hunters, trying to dive into a flooded area. They're entertainers seeking treasure to put on lavish shows. Abaddon, who's the financial guy, decides he wants to give up, and Stumer, who is the storyteller, agrees, but Morlin refuses. Aloy's interested in Morlin's diving bell, and they bounce ideas to come up with a new device, but Aloy wants to know what they're after. Calling it an Ember, they're holograph projectors that his grandfather wanted to gather more of, but died before he could save up the money to return to this area. Down below, Morlin reveals what happened, an image of oceanic life before water flooded into the area, confirming Poseidon is here, including a red light that indicates rage. Gathering the materials, Aloy creates a breathing mask and dives into the oceanic waters, finding images of Poseidon's dream of a living ocean in neon. Most importantly, Aloy learns of Stanley Chen, the man who won a fortune in Las Vegas and would go on to save the city as it suffered from increased droughts, through rerouting water and creating a dome to protect the city from the increased heat. Aloy would find a new machine called a Tide Ripper that prevents her from locating Poseidon. Aloy follows the red lights to slowly drain the water, showcasing that Poseidon might be aware of her location, but at the same time the Tide Ripper seems to be preventing her from heading to the location. Chen was first part of Far Zenith, but before leaving Vegas was the final person to walk down the strip, showcasing his love for this city, with the water being drained down from the upper areas, allowing Aloy to take on the Tide Ripper with the help of her new Oseram friends. Inside the main power station, Stanley Chen reveals his last gift to Las Vegas, keeping the power system on standby instead of turning it off to ensure it could last for thousands of years. This is why Poseidon came to the desert. Stanley made it so the city could live again for anyone who finds it, and it shows when Aloy turns on the system after securing Poseidon, with all the city's lights turning back on. You can return to the area and find a thriving community from the Oseram brothers. I think they're brothers. Either way, they are family, so let's assume that. Including the Boone sisters, who are bringing new weapon technology to the area for security purposes, with each of the Oseram entertainers trying to focus on a different aspect of trying to protect the area while offering new avenues of entertainment. You can find embers below for Stemmer in order to create new holographic projections in the night sky or day sky depending on what time of day, and you can help Moreland create a hot air balloon by using a specialized flamethrower found below in the city's depths. Well, the first time it's a failure, the second time it's a massive success, but either way, he created a hot air balloon, which is freaking awesome and it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, you can't fly it around because it's tethered to the ground, and if it wasn't, you would fly away and eventually crash, which is what happens in the beginning. With Poseidon captured, Gaia starts clearing up the water, but Gaia provides details into aiding Aloy's allies, including fixing the land gods for Zoe, as we already discussed, and helping Kotalo with his lost arm as he's dealing with the phantom pain. Aloy can also bring up Cyan and Firebreak, but Cyan refuses to interact with Gaia after what happened at Firebreak with Hephaestus. We also can find out more about Far Zenith, but Gaia informs that only Oswald, the hologram guy from the beginning who created the Holo live streaming service, was the only publicly known person within Far Zenith, so that's the only information we know so far. All that remains right now is capturing Demeanor, but before leaving, Aloy speaks to Beta, who is interested in the same video Aloy saw as a child, showing they do have similar interests, but they're not entirely the same, with Beta developing a bond with Varl, who makes an increased effort to try and talk to her, revealing Tilda might be different considering that she acts like Varl does, taking an interest in her and helping her through the more traumatic times during her training with Apollo. Tilda was the only Zenith to show her face to Beta, creating a VR replica of her home and expose her to the paintings and media files that she kept within, with Beta revealing that she was an expert programmer, but Aloy wants tactical information that Beta doesn't have, and becomes hostile towards Aloy for asking such information because she sees Tilda as one of the few good ones who actually saw her as a person instead of just some sort of asset to be used, which Aloy should sympathize with considering that's how she felt when she found out why Gaia created her, along with becoming an anointed among the Nora. She was seen as an object and she wanted to be seen as a person, like how Ross saw her. Aloy is frustrated at how Beta is so hopeless while Varl tries to act like a person and empathize with not only Aloy's constant struggles, but the fact that Beta also has to deal with her own problems. She hasn't really interacted with regular people and was treated like an object by the Zeniths, but Varl shows that he can bridge the gap between Aloy and Beta, similar to how Ross bridged the gap between the Nora tribes and Aloy to try and get her a better understanding of the land despite being an outcast. When searching for Demeanor, Aloy can engage in the final part of Tanala's mission, with her finally locating Amadis, with her revealing she loves him. Amadis reveals that he needed to find a woman named Nessa, who disguised herself as a soldier since women couldn't serve in the Karja army. Learning she could have been taken prisoner by the Tanakh to the Rot, Amadis went to look for her, with Tanala trying to locate him this entire time. Turns out Amadis killed his commander in self-defense when he found out that his plan was completely crazy and would have gotten a lot of people killed. But the commander was part of a powerful noble house, and even if he was granted a pardon by the Sun King Avad, it wouldn't stop the family of the commander from sending bounty hunters after him, so he has to remain in hiding. The three of them fight their way inside the prison, now under Regala's control, and find Nessa, having joined the Tanakh like Avad's cousin. Despite Amadis still in love with her, she has moved on, mourned him, and adapted a new life. Back at Baron's Light, you can talk to Tanala one last time before she heads back to Meridian. She states that she'll wait for Amadis until he's ready to move on from Nessa, but nevertheless she still very much loves him and cares about him. Whether he moves on is up to him, but I do like the fact that Tanala did at least get closure for all of this, and I hope in the next game she'll play a bigger role because this is the last time we'll interact with her, or maybe in a future expansion. Again, she's one of my favorite characters in the game. Gaia is able to track Demeter at a old Faro facility, but Aloy finds a bunch of Tanakh dead by the building and is attacked by warriors wearing white armor calling her a barbarian. The facility is charged with organic waste management, and most importantly, Aloy sees the same metal flowers from Zero Dawn and throughout the Forbidden West, locking the vault that she needs to enter in order to get to Demeter. Through her data point, Aloy discovers that this project was called Adamantine Wreath, and it was led by someone named Aquino, but in order for Aloy to get past the metal flower, she must locate Test Station Ivory. Killing more soldiers, Aloy locates someone wearing a focus who states her tribe is called the Quinn, who starts speaking in her people's doctrine. Sees a diviner named Alva, basically someone who is authorized by her people to study on ancient knowledge. Her home is in danger due to the biosphere decaying, with her people funding an expedition across the sea in order to search for answers. Called the Quinn, they are more versed in ancient knowledge than the rest of the tribes within the area, but at the same time, their technology is also antiquated compared to Aloy's, which is surprising. Their focuses are weaker, which can lead to us believing they're either given weaker focuses or that their technology is inferior because where they come from probably had outdated machinery. Alva's camp is stationed in the ruins of San Francisco, but nothing is found, so they came looking here instead for information. Alva reveals that the ancestors are revered in her culture, and this is the first time we get information about tribes outside from the mainland United States. This is from a different area across the sea, and given that the entire biosphere has changed, we can assume that there are other landmasses probably that they come from. Either way, the Quinn are different in how they provide information to their people, with us learning that their focuses are also outdated. This can lead us to believe that the higher authority either gives them weaker focuses or that their technology is outdated because the machinery around them is inferior. Either way, Alva does provide information that diviners like herself can use focuses within their society, and that information is limited based on what the higher authority authorized. Honestly, it kind of sounds like Oni from the Halo franchise, or even the United States, or a lot of big governments in our own modern time. With Alva confirming that they opened fire on Aloy because when they first arrived at the landmass, they were attacked by various different machines and people, so they assume everyone's a threat and they don't open any type of peace negotiations, they just kill on sight. When opening a file, Aloy realizes Alva's focus is out of date, as I stated, but she's able to share the information with Alva because of the shared network, confirming either her superiors gave her an inferior model, or they have access to higher models that they just keep for themselves, which wouldn't be that surprising. You limit the population with small trickles of information in order to keep them complicit. It works very effectively, but we don't know that. We're just hypothesizing because information about the Quinn is limited, and likely in the next game we'll get more information about them. We also get another data point from Ted showing he was willing to drop potential research just because it wasn't profitable, showcasing, like I stated in the Zero Dawn explanation video, that he was a businessman first and a scientist never. As I stated, Elisabet was the reason that the company was a success, and he was given the title the man who saved the planet. He didn't do anything, he just made a profit. Traveling through the lower facility, Aloy and Alva make it to another point to find a new machine flying around. This is called a Dreadwing. It is a giant bat with cloaking abilities. Sneaking past more machines, Aloy helps Alva but triggers the biomass conversion system, revealing that this is where they developed a system the Faro plague used to destroy all life on the planet, disturbing Alva because it completely destroys her worldview. They're supposed to revere the ancestors as being great people who helped the world, but over the course of the adventure, she starts to realize that that's not true at all. In fact, a lot of the information she knows is completely wrong, and it supplements the idea that her higher authority is actually keeping this information for themselves in order to keep everyone complicit. To help Alva understand what she's witnessing, Aloy decides to share Aquino's log, where she explains that she's aware of the Faro plague and her work was responsible for making all of this happen. They're attempting to develop the plants that machines couldn't eat, hence the metal flowers that will develop the vines that couldn't be consumed by the Faro plague, with Alva unaware of this again because this information was either erased or kept from them. Alva ignores this and to focus on the task at hand. Her people are dying and starving with her family at the brink of death. Aloy reassures her, but she needs access to Test Station Ivy, but first they must destroy the vines, assuring that she'll save everyone including her people. When heading outside and seeing everything dead, surprisingly the only thing that survived were the vines developed by Akino, showcasing that she was successful in her plan and the conversion process could not consume the plant life. But the Dreadwing that we saw earlier decides to attack, and as I stated, this is an incredibly dangerous fight as it's like a giant bat with cloaking abilities, but thanks to Alva you're able to take it down with her help. It's not easy to fight these things solo, but you know, with a partner it makes it a little easier. Inside, we get another data point where Ted's plan to create bioengineered crops was a success, but they could only be harvested in the best possible way by Faro robots, as Ted wanted from the start, to the scientists' annoyance. I mean, they even state that he's just getting richer while trying to limit actual progress that can save everyone. We do get more bad news about the project. Turns out Akino's plans were successful, but they reached the point of no return. Well, Akino accepting that she deserved her fate, and it's unlikely she joined Zero Dawn as I was unable to find any more data points regarding this. I'm pretty sure she just accepted her fate considering that she developed the technology that helped the Faro plague consume all life on the planet, but it's never confirmed. With Aloy able to replicate the virus to dissolve the vines from the facility located in Test Station Ivy. Now heading to the vault, she's able to gather demeanor like Poseidon and Ether, welcomes returning to Gaia and putting an end to the misery of being self-aware. Aloy gives Alva access to all the data in the facility including agriculture, but is attacked by Alva's people, the Quen. Thanks to Alva, they recognize Elisabet Sobeck in Aloy and decide to let her leave, but Alva tells her to get out quickly before they plan to take her back and, you know, use her for whatever purposes, but will need Alva's help later on in the mission. Back at base, Aloy can engage with the leader of the Sons of Prometheus, with Eren locating them and joining Aloy in the fight against their leader. They attempt to sneak in, with Eren posing as one of them, but bringing Aloy as a prisoner. However, they don't buy it because they don't recognize him, so they improvise and just beat their way inside. They're able to fight and take down Asera, but we also learn that she was way smarter and dangerous than Deval. So unlike Deval, which is currently in prison for his crimes, Asera, there is no option, you have to kill her. So we won't have her technology and her help if we need it in the later games. But considering that she wanted to burn Meridian to the ground and kill a lot of innocent people, it's probably for the best. You gotta put down the mad dog before she starts causing havoc everywhere. Back at base, Beta starts to open up thanks to Varl and Gaia speaking to her. Gaia, now with Demeter, Ether, and Poseidon, can now absorb Hephaestus, but they need a plan. They have to contain it in a physical location, one physical location, and Gaia needs to be within reach of Hephaestus to absorb it, so she also has to be in a physical location. Using Gemini, a failed cauldron by the original Gaia, damaged by earthquakes, has cores that would allow Gaia to absorb Hephaestus and allow Aloy to remove its malicious code. The problem is it'll output a lot of power and time, hours in fact, and Minerva won't be able to disguise it. Aloy decides to create multiple distractions in order to cover their tracks from far zenith, but Hephaestus has written out his alpha clearance, with Aloy needed omega clearance from Ted Faro, which if you remember is what he used to kill the alphas and purge Apollo. Aloy decides that she needs Alva's help once again to locate Faro's bunker, Thebes, and decides to head west where Beta makes a rig to contain Gaia. Before leaving, Aloy can ask Gaia about Tilda and Elisabet's relationship, but Liz never mentioned their relationship. As for Faro's Omega clearance, Aloy is confused how he got it, but in Zero Dawn there is a log that confirms it was made for him to have a backdoor unknown to Gaia and Liz, and it was made by Hank, you know, the guy who tried to steal Gaia, that Travis Tate found out and eventually tortured in order to get the information. As for Demeter's metal plants, Aloy asks if they could have saved the old ones, but Gaia says no, as the Feral Plague would have hacked the metal plants easily, eventually starting the cycle all over again. Before heading to San Francisco, Aloy can help Zoe and Kotalo with their personal missions, with Kotalo securing the materials needed to create a new arm thanks to information provided by Gaia and the focuses, with the final pieces of the arm coming from the Far Zenith bunker. Eventually we'll see what this arm looks like, but for now Kotalo has to build it. And for Zoe, it's all about repairing and reactivating her land gods, which over time they will clear the red blight and crops will start to grow again as you revisit them. They'll even start to sing the songs that the native Utaro love so much from them that developed their entire culture after. Heading to the ruins of San Francisco and specifically Legacy's landfall where Alva's people are located, Aloy meets with Bohai, second in command, and their leader Seo, with Bohai demanding Aloy for not being part of their culture and hostile towards her for killing Quinn. They found thieves by uncovering hidden data, but the bunker is closed to an Apex Thunderjaw and they cannot open the door. But they cannot leave empty-handed, as you'll find out from the people around. They took heavy losses getting here, with the latter mission having you recover a gyroscope. They need to go home and helping a local locate his lost brother. Aloy destroys the Apex Thunderjaw and meets Alva, who tries to warn Aloy about Seo, but they're cut short. At the bunker door, only Ted can open it, but the Quinn believed that Sobeck and Faro were friends. Like I stated earlier, a lot of information was twisted and distorted. Most likely it was either just public knowledge that they had access to and not confidential knowledge. If you remember in Zero Dawn, in exchange for funding the project, Elisabet Sobeck promised to keep the reason behind the Faro plague secret. It's unclear whether the public knew that Ted Faro was responsible for it, even though it was called the Faro plague because they used Faro robots, but judging by this information, they were not, and Elisabet kept her word, complementing Alva's unawareness of the Faro plague as well. Either the Quinn are purposely trying to maintain the illusion that Faro was a good person based on public knowledge, or not, and they're just unaware of this. The reason I say that is because Seo is actually nobility within the Quinn, so if that was available, he would know, but I guess not. Either way, Alva discovers that there are passages below, but they are flooded, but Aloy can't reach it because she has a breathing mask, showing that the bunker feeds on geothermic energy, confirming that the Faro plague actually could not consume the geothermic energy of the planet. Once inside, Aloy discovers those inside the bunker with Ted were afraid for their lives. That's not surprising, indicating that his spiritual guru suddenly died and was keeping Ted stable, with a log from Grigori, the guru, indicating he knew Ted destroyed Apollo and killed the Alpha. Heading to the main door, remember when everyone was calling the bunker a pyramid? Well, they were spot on. It's literally designed as one, and it's really disturbing. We find the next audio log about Kanya, who was Ted's doctor's daughter, who was given a position in the bunker. She starts to dig regarding the guru's death because he was in peak physical health, so it doesn't make sense that he would just drop dead. But just then, Aloy decides to open the door to press forward. Seo, dressed like Ted Faro, believes that he is Ted's reincarnation, and you can see from everyone they know he's insane, but of course the chain of command. They follow this guy because he's their leader, even though they know he's wrong. You know, the classic, like, we were just following orders, which, I mean, I don't buy anymore considering this guy's insane. Even forcing Aloy at gunpoint to wear a business attire to complete this charade, threatening to kill Ava in response if Aloy doesn't, you know, comply to everything he's stating. Inside the main hall, Ted has a literal statue of himself that towers to the ceiling and corruptors below. The stairs leading downstairs reveals that Grigori did find out what Ted did, and he killed the people in Zero Dawn, with the guy coming down with a sudden heart attack to Kanya's alarm. I mean, that's why she's researching it. This guy was in peak health and then he just suddenly dies. In the main hall, they mistake the corruptors as statues, leaving Alva and Aloy to fight them. After winning, the next log in the room confirms Ted killed Brianna, a hollow singer, who learned the truth as well. Downstairs, we find that Ted was undergoing treatment for life-extending therapy by allowing his cells to regenerate twice as fast as they died, but they needed to be kept in check to avoid mutating extensively. It's strange that Ted didn't have access to Far Zenith technology, all things given, but perhaps they tried to stay far away from this guy. Which I can't blame him, the guy was pretty crazy. But what he did have is Suicide Squad technology, putting kill switches in everyone's head in the bunker, with Kanya and her father deciding to do something extreme because of it. He tried to justify this, stating that he tried to save his daughter from the Faro plague, but she's not having it. She's basically a slave to this person, and this guy is completely unhinged, confirming what he did to the Alphas, to Zero Dawn, to Apollo, to Brianna, to everyone. So they decide on something extreme that we'll find out later. Aloy does reveal the information about the life extending therapy to CO and Alva, but CO doesn't believe in it because he believes he's the reincarnation of Ted. Down deeper, we learn that Ted did something to the geothermic plant that fuels the bunker, but it doesn't say what exactly he did. Aloy is able to get into Ted's office before everyone else because they can't get through the door, and she uses the ventilation system. To gain Omega level clearance, Ted reveals Kanye and her father killed themselves, but he still continues to act like a victim in all of this, stating that he saved them, and they still decide to take his gift and toss it out, revealing his plans to lead a new human race, but his mutations are getting out of control. Remember when he said that Apollo was a plague? That's not true. He wanted to lead humanity out of darkness, if you can believe that, as their new leader, because they would be just idiots, unable to completely conceive of what he was bringing to the table. Let's face it, Ted may not have been a scientist, but he was a smart businessman. He wanted absolute control over the human race to become this type of god who can live forever and do whatever he wants. Kind of sounds like the Far Zeniths, right? Well, when Aloy starts to hear roars behind another door, after learning that his mutations are starting to get out of control without a doctor to keep them in check, we don't get to see what happened to Ted, but CEO is sick by Ted's appearance when he goes to see what's behind that door, and orders his men to kill Ted and everyone else in the facility to protect this information. Unfortunately, Ted rigged the bunker to explode if he ever died. I mean, mutating into a hideous blob monster and being set on fire with no conscience of who he was or what he did, I mean, to me, that's too good for him. He deserved far worse than what this happened to him. Trying to get to the main room of the bunker, it starts to flood with lava, and CO dies trying to escape, crushed by the Ted statue's head, which is just ironic. Alva and Aloy make it out, but Bohai, who threatens to kill them when he recognizes that they're lying to him to placate the situation by stating that CO selflessly sacrificed himself. But Bohai realizes that this is a lie. He understands that CO was a complete insane person, and he would never do something like that. He was selfish, arrogant, and most importantly, insane. Aloy then proceeds to tell the truth, stating that if they succeed in fixing the biosphere, he can take credit at the Quinn's home base when he returns and be given a huge promotion. He agrees to this, giving Aloy access to their camp, but at the same time leaving Alva in Aloy's care in order to make sure that everything goes according to plan, and demands reports on everything. Aloy agrees, and she is sent back to base. So back at base, Ava is beyond excited to have limited access to the information like a true scholar. The information starts to contract what Alva has been told by the Quinn, as we already predicted, such as Eric being a military mastermind, but in actuality was a murderous person, but no information is provided about the others, as a lot of it is obscured in secrecy. Only limited information is known about the Far Zeniths, with only one person ever being known publicly, which was Oswald at the beginning of the game. Everything Alva says does highlight the Quinn will likely play a larger role in the next game though. How much they establish themselves and use the information that Alva will likely bring back to them. Alva does speak of her family, her sister Alaika, and her parents are peasants, with Alva using her special position as a diviner to get more food despite the shortages and save them from the raging floods. This led to the Quinn dedicating large amounts of resources into voyaging in hopes of locating tech to save the Quinn, eventually leading to CO's madness as they took heavy losses and didn't find what they needed, believing that he would be able to save them. So he was a good person in the past, but eventually the failure just got to him, and he eventually became this person that we saw that got crushed by Ted's statue. After meeting Alva, Kotalo wants to test out his new arm, and it's a success, but Kotalo decides that it's only meant to be used in combat, and instead wants to be true to who he is right now. He lost his arm, and he wants to accept this. This is who he is, and the arm will just simply be an extension of himself if he ever needs it in combat, which is incredible. He's still a marshal, he's still Tanakh, even without his arm. This is just a tool to be used just in case he needs it, and I really love Kotallo. He's such an incredible character. Alva also makes note that the imperial family of her land would use this technology for himself instead of trying to help everyone else, which, highlights how authoritarian and tyrannical they can actually be. You can also complete Zoe's final part of her mission and repair the land gods. In doing so, they'll start to sing, most likely Gaia's intervention in order to add new code to the land gods. In doing so, every time you head back to the region, you'll see the area start to flourish with new life. The red blight will be eliminated and food will start to grow, but like Gaia stated, she still needs complete control over the cauldron network in order to maintain this. Eventually, it will fail without constant machine interface. But even though the land gods are now able to fix everything, eventually Hephaestus could try and take over once again. Beta does create the necessary tools, but Gaia needs about 35 hours to absorb Hephaestus, but Aloy proposes giving Beta Omega clearance, reducing the amount of time since Hephaestus would have to counter both at the same time. Despite this plan, Beta has another mental breakdown, afraid they'll capture her again, and falls into a defeatism attitude again, telling Aloy she doesn't understand, and Aloy doesn't understand why she's so weak. They share everything, with Beta painfully acknowledging this and considering herself a defect. Aloy then realizes why. It's Rost. He trained her, taught her the importance of sacrifice, and loved her. Beta showcases that she has been diving into Aloy's life in order to find out why she's so strong and doesn't understand what love truly is, as she thought Ross didn't care for Aloy when he wanted to leave when Aloy went to the Proven. But in fact, it goes full circle of what Teresa said back in Zero Dawn, how despite losing his daughter, he made Aloy into one of the strongest and most determined people in the Nora, and he cared for her as she was his flesh and blood. Aloy tells Beta that she doesn't have to go, but decides to go if Aloy promises to kill her if the Farseena troops try to capture her, and Aloy agrees. After this conversation, Beta becomes surprisingly more open, even talking openly and eagerly about what Eren would be interested in. Before heading out, Aloy does aid Alva in a personal mission to recover Leviathan, a network of river gates and tunnels to regulate flooding in order to help her people, but they lack the code to operate it. Aloy agrees to help, but the diviner who found its location is scared to reveal where he found it because it's laced with forbidden knowledge. But given all that happened, Alva just doesn't care anymore, as this forbidden knowledge will help their people, and it's necessary to understanding what exactly happened in the past. They can't be kept in the dark anymore. When we head to the location, we find out why exactly he decided to keep this information under lock and key. The precursor to Leviathan, or Kumbo, was contaminating the water supply, leading to hundreds dead, but Eileen Sasaki, who created Leviathan, threatened the researcher who found out with lawsuits, forcing him to delete all the data and forwarding the information to herself. Aloy doesn't give up though, and heads to Eileen's office with Alva. While heading up, Eileen is shown speaking with her dad. It turns out she threatened the researcher under her father's orders despite feeling guilty for what happened. The final video in her office shows that Eileen forced out her father from the company, and apparently they have to speak through lawyers from now on, vowing to do better and build Leviathan right, to be better than her father. This does reassure Alva, and she's able to get a copy of Leviathan for her people. Best of all, you can jump down using the shield wing, and it's actually a pretty fun thing to do. Everyone sets their plan in motion in order to capture Hephaestus, with each pulse generator working as Aloy goes on to force Hephaestus out. The pulse generators will act as decoys for Far Zenith as they try to capture Hephaestus. Chasing the AI, Aloy takes on multiple powered up machines to funnel Hephaestus into one location. Beta and Aloy use the Omega Axis to begin processing Hephaestus as Aloy gains the ability to override Sunwings, the mounts that we saw earlier in the game and are on top of mountains. But the ruse is up, with the Zeniths appearing and killing Varl as he tries to defend Beta. It's really heartbreaking to see Varl put in his heart and soul to fight Eric, but the guy cheats. If it was a one-on-one fight, Varl would have kicked his ass. Eric then takes Beta, and Beta begs Aloy to kill her, but she cannot. Even if she shot the arrow, it likely was guarded by some sort of shielding technology around Eric and Beta. Either way, she just can't do it, and she feels like she's lost as the Zeniths prepare to kill Aloy, but just in a stroke of luck, Tilda betrays the Zeniths and teleports Aloy away in a blinding flash of light. Aloy wakes up in a secret bunker and finds that Tilda has an entire art collection below her house. It's completely preserved, and you can take the time in order to showcase how much this collection meant to Tilda, to the point that she spent millions of dollars preserving these specific art collections in order to showcase how important they were just to herself. Also, in a way, it kind of reflects what Silence did, a way to try and build that connection so Aloy will bring down her barriers, similar to what Silence did when he spoke about his life. Finally meeting Tilda, she reveals they were tracking Hephaestus, which led the Zeniths to them. I mean, obviously they would, but the pulse generators would have probably helped, but I guess not. The Zeniths are extremely smart and they have advanced technology, so that should have been something that I predicted, but I was floored by that as well. Tilda disabled the Zenith's shield with her weapon, but the power knocked Aloy out. But Aloy is untrusting of Tilda, as she should be, who she reveals she doesn't like the Zeniths as they are cold killers, and was moved by Aloy's extraordinary life. Seeing through her focus, she sees that Elisabet and Aloy share many aspects in similar ways, but Aloy is much more tougher considering that she grew up in a world full of robot dinosaurs. That should be expected. And she's shamed of what the Zeniths want to destroy this beautiful world for their own personal gain. Tilda somehow reiterates what Beta stated, which is a big red flag, and you'll find out why, and believes that the Zeniths plan to steal Gaia in order to create their own paradise. But most importantly, she knows about Regalla and her rebels and what Silence has planned for them. He plans to gain control of the entire Tanakh tribe and use them as a huge distraction to charge the Far Zenith base. They'll completely die due to the servitors and their weapons, but he'll be able to sneak in and plans to use his weapon in order to take back Gaia and Apollo from the Far Zeniths. Tilda reveals she was an orphan after her family died, a little backstory about who she is, definitely reflective of what Silence did, and she was sent to boarding school. Using her programming expertise to detect fakes in arts, she was using the same technology for espionage, joining Far Zenith, but wanted Liz to join her when the Faro plague started to ravage the earth, eventually creating a world where everyone was fulfilled in VR on Sirius X, which is important later. We'll find out why this is so important. As for Beta, Tilda reassures Aloy that she's completely fine, but will force her by any means to combine Gaia and Hephaestus since they need the Omega clearance that Aloy gave to her. Tilda also shares that she had a channel with Beta where she could share this information with Secret and hang out with her in order to deliver the information that Beta told us back at the bunker. She also explains that while Silence was incredibly hard to keep track of because he kept every precaution possible, the pawns in his army were not, and they were easy to keep track of. She also reiterates that Sirius suffered from a massive geological event, killing most of them. When asked about Elisabet, Tilda starts comparing how Aloy is like Elisabet but better than her, but Tilda avoids talking about Liz too much and opens up how they met. They eventually were infatuated with one another, with Elisabet fully aware of who Tilda was, showing how much information Elisabet actually had access to. But eventually we learned that they were in a relationship and they ended things, but this will be important later. As we already suspected based on all the other audio dialogues, I mean, it's pretty obvious that they were in a relationship. Aloy refuses to accept allowing the Tanakh to die for Silence's plan and asks Tilda to speak to Beta, as Tilda wants to use Silence's plan in order to try and sneak into the base and steal Beta along with Gaia, but again, Aloy doesn't want all these people to die for this stupid war. And it works. Beta is able to gain a connection to Aloy using a secure channel, but she's annoyed that Aloy didn't end her as promised. But Aloy assures that she'll be coming to save her, telling her a plan that is kept from the player and from Tilda, which is a bit strange, but I mean, it offers a shocking revelation later, so the player doesn't see it coming. It also finally comes to reason that Aloy accepts that Beta is her sister and not a clone of Elisabet. They're both their own person and should be treated as such. Eventually, Aloy will come to terms with this. Tilda informs Aloy of a horror cell that can be used to cause a massive explosion as he attempts to save the Tanakh and defeat Regalla once for all, with Aloy planning to make use of Silence's plan but only for herself. Back at base, everyone is mourning the death of Varl, but when everyone seems hopeless, Aloy returns as Kotala goes to his people to prepare against the fight against Regalla. Aloy accepts this and tells him to be prepared for when she arrives. Everyone prepares as Aloy realizes not to hold herself to Beta or Liz's standards, and that their own people, while also mourning the death of Varl and finding strength in Ross's words. In Beta's room, despite Beta's defeatism attitude, she finds out that she held Aloy to high regard. As stated before, when we found out that she knew about Ross, she was researching deeply into Aloy's life, usually through the focuses. Beta is smarter than Aloy given Apollo's training, so it's pretty expected that she would have hacked into other people's focuses in order to get more information. Before leaving, Aloy heads outside to Varl's grave, where Zoe is buried him to overlook both Plainsong and the Nora Sacred Land. Knowing that Sona just lost her daughter and now her son, it will likely weigh heavily on her and possibly will be explained in a future story. Whether she will blame Aloy for this, blame the Far Zeniths, we'll have to wait and see, but she is even though she's a war chief first, she is a mother, and you can hear from the first game how she was worried for Varl's safety, considering she lost her daughter Vala to Eclipse, and now she lost her son within the span of 6 months. So it's very devastating. As for Zoe, she tells Aloy that she's pregnant before leaving and preparing for the final battle. Aloy overwrites a Sunwing, unlocks the Tallneck to activate the Horus power cells spoken to her by Tilda, and heads to the fight against Regalla's rebels. Using the cells, it disables Regalla's machines, and Aloy challenges Regalla to combat. After a grueling victory, Aloy wins, and it's up to you to decide Regalla's fate. Personally, I chose to let Regalla join on this suicide mission, granted her a better death than the one that would have been given to her in this ring. And Asura Merc arrives with a message from Silence, forcing him out of hiding and allowing Aloy to finally meet him face to face for the first time in the game. Back at the base, Silence finally arrives, and after threatening Silence for his actions, Tilda arrives to speak to Silence. To his shock, he doesn't trust Far Zenith, as you might expect. I mean, as of now, we only assume that Silence does want to save the planet, because if the planet dies, he dies with it. So he is an anti-hero for the most part. But we'll find out his true plans later. Tensions are high as they both hate each other, along with Regalla present in the base. Speaking to Silence, he reveals that he wanted Aloy to give herself up to prevent her from stopping Regalla's takeover, but was unaware of Beta, but refuses to share how his weapon works, but knew of Omega clearance when Aloy told him about Faro, ending the conversation that he doesn't trust Tilda, and neither should Aloy, as while they may not see eye to eye, their interests align, and Tilda's does not, as she's lived forever, and you should always consider her a threat, considering the company she's kept for hundreds of years. Down below, Regalla waits for battle as Aloy asks why she did everything, with Regalla recounting her family's death, hearing them scream as they burned alive. Revenge consumed her with nothing to live for, and she went to her chieftain, who refused to chase the Kardra into Meridian and kill them, similar to Devald and Asura from the Sons of Prometheus and the Asura Mercs from Horizon Zero Dawn. Hikaru wanting peace with the Kardra was the final straw for her, so she decided to rebel, attack Hikaru, which she failed at, and then eventually align with Silence, which would lead to present-day events. After worried she might betray them during the mission, Regalla makes it clear to Aloy that she made an oath, and no Tanakh will follow her, considering that she just failed in her mission and all her rebels are dead. All that's left is for her to get a glorious death in battle. Speaking to Tilda, she does confirm finally that Liz and her had a romantic relationship, but she wanted more and Liz didn't, ending things, which seems ironic considering that it was Liz who seemed extremely hurt when bringing up Apollo in the beginning of the game. But Tilda is appreciative when Aloy tells her that Liz hated how things ended as well, so maybe it was mutual, but judging by the language and the way that Tilda explains things, it doesn't seem that way. Since Tilda has no love for Far Zenith, she has no problem revealing who they were. First up is Eric. He headed a private military corporation and would take on missions personally. According to Tilda, he got worse over time in his VR simulations, where he would go on rampages, and the more you do something, the more desensitized you become to it. But regardless, he would bask in the glory knowing that Alva's people actually worshipped him. So, big ego. Gerald was a billionaire financial conglomerate who loved control over everything, which is probably how he secured everyone's loyalty throughout the missions. It's unclear how he exactly has control over everyone, considering all of these people are billionaires and likely would like to be the boss. But either way, she makes it seem like he likes to have control over everyone, so maybe he has blackmail or promises or something, but Tilda always laughed at the fact that he thought he could control her. Next up is Stanley Chen. Aloy does tell her about how Las Vegas still stands, and Tilda advises Aloy that he was always an optimist. In fact, whereas everyone else remained isolated in their own private VR simulation, their own paradise per se, Stanley did the opposite. He recreated Las Vegas and opened it up to everyone. Whoever wanted to come can join him in his VR simulation with gambling, shows, the strip, everything. Unfortunately, despite being one of the good ones, even Tilda admits that he died when Sirius X collapsed. Verbena, who we saw died when Beta was trapped inside the facility in order to evade the Far Zeniths, was actually just inherited her wealth. She became an influencer and basically would just tell people what to buy in order to gain followers. Yeah, she's basically just a social media influencer who inherited her billions. I think she might be a parody on Kim Kardashian, but I feel like they just decided to play with the idea that someone could become one of the most powerful people on the planet without doing anything. Tilda referred to her as her own brand of ruthlessness, along with her being a life designer, but ultimately she did die, and judging by that single cutscene, she may have looked down on everyone as being beneath her. I mean, she did say they were worthless. Before heading out, Aloy can spend one-on-one time with her various allies, such as sharing a drink with Eren, but if you remember from Horizon Zero Dawn, Aloy isn't a fan of alcohol. It's an isolated side mission that rarely anyone knows about, but Aloy is not a fan of it, but she wants to do this with her friend, with Eren recalling how Avad sneaked out Ursa from the Sun Ring by dressing her up like a Carter noblewoman. But Avad also had to do it in order to get out as well, which he did, and the plan was a huge success. The two share some laughs, and well, Eren has a great time remembering his sister when she was alive. It's a really somber moment. We can then speak to Zoe, how she mentions she misses Varl, and the last time they were together was watching a hologram of Earth and realizing that Earth was worth saving. That on this large planet there are so many different varieties of life, people, and things that can live on this planet, and it's worth dying for. It's what Varl died for, and it's what she's willing to sacrifice herself for as well. Alva talks about what she'll do once they come back, optimistic that they'll be a success no matter what, learning that the Queen has rejected so much forbidden knowledge from the public and not being able to accept the fact that all this information can do so much good for her people, wondering if she'll challenge the superiors, but also what it would do to her people. She also acknowledges that there's someone back home waiting for her, an old rival that turned lover. So it does seem that Guerrilla is setting up Alva to be a much more major character in the long run, considering how much information we got from her, from the Queen, her life, and everything that's going on across the sea. Kotalo thanks Aloy for everything she has done for him and plans to honor Varl's sacrifice by etching his memory on his skin, a tradition by the Tanakh for honoring sacred memories, showing that despite he's only known Varl for such a short amount of time, he saw him as a great warrior. Next comes the final mission. Tilda reveals that there's an ancient escape route hidden to everyone but her. At the base, it'll take them to a path of the outer realm of their facility, which is an old military base refashioned to bring supplies between the Odyssey and Earth. Eren will carry Silence's device while the others try and avoid the Spectres to try and reach to the middle. If they come in one large group, they'll notice what's happening. Most importantly is that Aloy understands that they can't trust Tilda. To find out what Tilda is after, Aloy decides to charge Alva to look through Beta's information in order to find out how to hack into the Far Zenith network, while Kotalo protects her from the Spectres. Heading just outside the base, Tilda reveals an ancient escape route hidden to everyone but her, as she used her programming knowledge in order to disguise it. At the base, they use the tunnel Tilda hid from Far Zenith, and they begin to plan, with everyone heading through the outer realm, with Alva and Kotalo heading to the security channel unknown to Tilda, while she goes to hack the security node for everyone. Regala, Zoe, and Silence take the high ground as Aloy and Eren sneak around the rim of the facility to protect the weapon. After sneaking past, a stampede of specters appear, and just then Beta executes her plan, releasing Hephaestus. Detecting the Zeniths are a threat to the biosphere, it hacks the printer matrix to produce machines at an alarming rate to fight the specters. Now they have to capture Hephaestus again, or as Silence recommends, make a new one using the information provided by Apollo, but that's not here or there. Unfortunately, things don't go well for Aloy, Silence, Eren, and Regala as they are ambushed by a bunch of specters. Regala decides to stay behind to save everyone to get the death she was promised, with the ceiling coming down, destroying the specters and killing Regala. Just then, the Zeniths appear to find Aloy and the gang and fight Hephaestus' robots as Silence prepares his weapon, and at the nick of time deploys it, allowing the machines to kill most of the Zeniths now that their shields are gone. Tilda warns everyone they have to stop Gerard before he takes Beta and Gaia on the Odyssey. Tilda separates to fight Gerard while Aloy goes on ahead, getting ambushed by Eric, with Alva hacking into the network. Despite not having shields, Eric does have better weapons and armor, but Aloy comes out on top, with him being glad to just feel pain and feel alive, but nevertheless Zoe comes down and delivers the final blow to avenge Faro's death. Heading up, Tilda warns that Gerald destroyed the Matrix and terminated power, forcing Aloy to climb up the old-fashioned way. Alva got into the network successfully, revealing the Zeniths didn't plan to stay on Earth. In fact, they are afraid of something called Nemesis before Alva was kicked out of the network. At the top, Aloy frees Beta and they gain access to the Zeniths database to look up Nemesis. It's a bright red orb made up of machines, most likely nanobots similar to the Spectres, and it's coming after the Zeniths. Earth was just a pit stop for them, and just then Tilda shows up and kills Gerard. Aloy confronts Tilda about Nemesis, revealing it's a collection of minds, digitized, but when they declared it a failure, they left it in isolation with the minds of thousands yelling at one another. Basically the sane people along with the insane people, and they just kept seething for hundreds of years until eventually gaining sentience, and using the knowledge of Far Zenith destroyed the entire colony on Sirius X, hacking through their system because they knew everything about it. Beta realizes Nemesis sent the signal that woke up Hades to prevent the Zeniths from having anywhere to return, realizing the plan failed and it's now coming to Earth as the Zeniths plan to steal Gaia to find a random world to terraform hidden from Nemesis. Tilda wants to take Aloy with her to the stars, which is just insane. Calling Beta an inferior copy of Elisabet Sobeck, that's why she took an interest in her, just to see if she would develop into a much better version or equal version of Elisabet Sobeck, but as we saw, Beta did not. So both Aloy and Beta are just toys to her. But she isn't asking for Aloy to join her. She plans to take Aloy like an object or a trophy to be owned because, you know, Aloy loved that in Horizon Zero Dawn. Despite not having a shield, she calls on Spectre Prime, basically a large transformer, and Aloy does battle with the machine, eventually causing it to implode, killing Tilda in the process. Just then, Silence decides to appear. Now, it's not really made sense how or where he came from. Likely he was either fighting the Zeniths or maybe he was fighting the Spectres, but he appears and he deduces that Tilda tried to take Aloy. And he's also aware of Nemesis and even developed tech to remove the shields from the Zeniths because of what he learned through Hades. That's why he wiped Hades' knowledge so Aloy would not know anything that he learned through the machine. Assuming Aloy wouldn't do what is necessary, but he admires she succeeded. Even though his plan was in shambles, he got what he wanted. Silence plans to take the Odyssey with Apollo to explore the stars, even asking Aloy to join him, but of course she refuses and asks Silence to fight alongside her to defeat Nemesis. Silence tries to convince Aloy by using Elisabet's ideology as an example that life should continue, and with this they can continue to bring life to other planets, stating that despite being highly advanced, Zenith stood no chance against Nemesis, so what chance does Earth stand considering that we're so primitive? Not realizing that the reason it took over Zenith so effectively was because it had access to the entire system. Earth is an entire wild card. but Aloy chooses to stay. That's because the decision she chose was to remain on Earth. Elisabet could have easily gone to Far Zenith with Sirius X. She was well aware of this organization, but chose to stay. It's not only that she cares about life, but she cares about Earth. That's what Silent fails to recognize. Elisabet cared about the planet. She wanted life to continue on this planet because she loved Earth. But to him, she just cared about Zero Dawn, which it's not something that Silence can fully grasp at this moment. But when he goes to head to the Odyssey, he sees everyone together and happy, and it seems to move Silence. He decides to stay and fight with Aloy, stating that she needs all the help she can get. Either realizing being alone for centuries would drive him insane, as humans do need interaction, or he plans to take control of Nemesis. I know that seems like an insidious way to look at things, but I mean, this is Silence, and this entire game series he's done just horrible things. He created the Eclipse, he constantly betrayed people closest in his life, he constantly hurt people, especially innocent people, but we need all the help we can get. Aloy decides to send all of her allies to the far corners of the Earth in order to get help in order to fight Nemesis. Gaia is nearly at 100%, and given that she has most of her subordinate functions, can easily absorb Hephaestus. Unfortunately, they have to track down the rogue program, who's likely learned from the past and is likely going to be even harder to track down. Regardless, this is where Horizon Forbidden West ends. In the epilogue, we learned that Hephaestus is even more powerful than before, having absorbed some of Zenith's code, and thereby the original plan of using Gemini won't work a second time. However, combined with the knowledge retrieved from the Zenith copy of Apollo, along with Silence, they were able to upgrade Gaia with Hephaestus' source code. While not as powerful as the rogue Hephaestus in the Cauldron network, it does give Gaia some control over the terraforming process. She's still not powerful enough to take on Hephaestus with his new upgrades, so she'll have to wait before they can get a new plan to try and capture it once again. They also extended the timeline to 1 year before Nemesis arrives, so they can better prepare for everything that's about to happen. So it's likely that there will be a huge battle between all three. Hephaestus trying to protect the biosphere, while at the same time Gaia trying to absorb Hephaestus and take control of the Cauldron network, while at the same time Nemesis likely trying to hack all the systems. If Nemesis comes, it'll likely try to hack Hephaestus, and Hephaestus will fight back with everything it got. Remember, Hephaestus is a rogue AI. It's still subjugated to its original program to protect the biosphere by all costs by using the machines, so it will see Nemesis as a threat, just as it saw the Far Zenith organization as a threat. So that brings us to the end of Horizon Forbidden West. So what will happen in the next game? Well, I highly infer that the Quinn will play a large role within the game, considering how much they established with Alva. We also can consider that other regions will open up to see how the other parts of the planet have been affected by Hephaestus and the other subordinate AIs, while at the same time it'll be interesting to see how Guerrilla decides to tackle that, considering that all the areas have always been one large map, heavily condensed together, but having other maps, perhaps, maybe linear sections in other areas. But considering how limited travel is, they do highlight that the Quinn took major losses when they tried to travel from one region to the next, so that could be a major problem. But then again, we have access to flying mounts, so maybe that will actually open up to airships, especially with the hot air balloon, but that would be advanced technology. But we do have Gaia on our side, so that can open up a lot of avenues. Lastly is Hephaestus. He's the biggest problem and the biggest solution, to be honest. So a large portion of the game will probably focus on us trying to capture Hephaestus, or maybe even trying to convince Hephaestus to join us, because it seems strange that Hephaestus doesn't want to be part of Gaia, considering the other AIs, Poseidon, Demeter, and Ether, wanted to be part of Gaia, but Hephaestus, it seems like it's something else going on there. So my hypothesis that the next game, or if the expansion rumors are true, will focus on the Quinn and other regions of the world along with Hephaestus. But if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Let me hear your hypothesis for the future of Horizon. Tell me what you thought of the game, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining me. Stay awesome.